I'd like to call the regular South Windsor Town Council meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councillor Buganski.
Present.
Councillor Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Balboni. Present. Councillor Carey.
Present.
Mayor Delnicki.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Present.
Councillor King. Here. Councillor Evans.
Here.
Councillor Pendleton.
Okay, moving on to item 4, Mayor's remarks. I just have a few comments and a letter to read into the record. On Saturday, December 16th, I, as well as Councilors Lewis and Pendleton, attended the Wreaths Across America ceremony at Veterans Memorial Park. The ceremony was hosted by American Legion Post 133. It was well attended by the public, and weather was great for the volunteers to place the wreaths on the grave sites of our South Windsor veterans. Town offices will be closed on Monday, December 25th, in observance of the Christmas holiday, and town offices will also be closed on January 1st, 2024 for New Year's Day. To all those that celebrate, we'd like to wish you a happy Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa runs from December 26th through January 1st. And finally, I would like to read a letter I received from our guest speaker at the Veterans Day ceremony this past November 11th. Dear Madam Mayor, my purpose in writing is to commend the people in the Parks and Recreation Department responsible for getting the Veterans Memorial Park ready for Veterans Day ceremony this past November 11th, 2023. I was informed by Jean Boderian and others that the ceremony may not have come about at the memorial due to the bridge and road work being done close to the park. The Herculean task of getting the area cleared of equipment and road paved was nothing short of a great team effort by the people involved. Unfortunately, I do not know the names of actual responsible workers, as I do not have the pleasure of living in your wonderful town and knowing them by name. I was the guest speaker at this year's Veterans Day ceremony. 5, Councilor Buganski.
Hereby move for the adoption of the agenda.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to suggest that we move 13C up on the agenda after the public input, item number 7.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion? Any? All those in favor
Aye.
of moving? Opposed? Okay. Motion to move 13C.
What, I'm sorry, I didn't hear votes from the other council members. Can we get a roll call, please? I didn't hear anything from anyone.
I don't see a 13C.
It's on page 10 of 11.
Oh, my apologies.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Care to explain why?
Yes, because further discussion needs to take place about this appointment, and there is no discussion to be had on consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
To new business. We can move it to new business.
Is that, okay. Just want to make sure.
13G, is that what you want to make?
But we need to vote on that last one first,
All right, yes, okay, move.
so not just a vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that amendment has been made. Any other motions?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to items number 6, communications and reports from the town manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, on my written report, I wanted to draw your attention to the staffing report that last week I sent to the council that was conducted by CCM. They polled 5 communities that are of similar size and service deliveries. The report results showed that the majority of the South Windsor departments are staffed at the median level or lower when compared to other communities. Also, I wanted to draw your attention to the once-a-month larger town manager's report that Kathy Senerth in my office has been able to upload that town manager's report to Constant Contact. And moving forward, we'll be sending out the town manager's report to currently 1,275 contacts. And if someone's interested in receiving the monthly town manager's report, they can email Kathy Senerth. Her email is located on the town manager department's webpage. Nevers Park Outdoor Fitness. The Parks Department has been working on the new outdoor fitness zone in Nevers Park. Much of the equipment's been installed. The site has some finishing work that will need to get done in the spring when the weather is better. We're asking that all residents not climb on or use the equipment until the project is complete in the spring. In terms of an update on the splash pad, staff are trying to get as much of the work complete as possible given the weather conditions. Currently, the fence around the facility is being implemented. Quick economic development construction update for the council building. In 158, currently chiropractic, which is a 2-unit commercial building, which is currently under construction. Whole Foods, which is scheduled to open in mid-January. My Salon Suite, and then Club Studio, which is currently under construction. We also have Hartford Truck, which is currently, and then 25 Buckland Road at 2400 Tamarack Avenue. I also, off my report, wanted to recognize the Department of Public Works for their great work today in response to the storm. We had approximately 16 locations throughout town at one point that were closed or had some type of hazard involved. Of those 16, I believe there were 6 in total with power lines involved. The large majority of those have been restored at this point, and Public Works staff are home getting some much-deserved rest. We do have Eversource in town still working on 1 or 2 locations, and I believe Asplund is also still in town working on cleaning up those locations once the wires are removed. At last check, I think we had about 150 people who still did not have power in town, and there's an estimate to restore them sometime this evening, so that should be happening very soon. And lastly, I just wanted to wish happy holidays to the community as well as all of you. No matter what holiday anybody celebrates, I wanted to wish them all a happy holiday. And that's all I have in my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for the town manager? Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, Mr. Town Manager, you had sent something out to us last week regarding someone, a citizen who was talking about erosion of a creek through his property. And I called and asked if maybe we should ask the town attorney if we're responsible for that. Have you reached out to, can you tell me your comments and your experience on that?
Sure. So we had the Public Works Director go out to review that location, and that creek goes through multiple private properties prior to that gentleman's property, as well as on the other side going under the road. The individuals, when water enters onto your property, it's the responsibility of the property owner prior to where that water is coming from. So since he's next to a neighbor who owns private property and that water is coming from there, it's actually that neighbor's responsibility. Additionally, since it is private property, the town doesn't have responsibility to ensure there's not erosion occurring with the stream or something of that nature. It is his stream and his private property that he's responsible for. So I think we could go down a little bit of a slippery slope if we were to go into some type of a scenario where we were trying to work on his private property to fix that stream, and any chance that we get, we do try to avoid that. So I think I answered most of what you're looking for.
I think so. Thank you very much. My follow-up question is the source of the creek, is that our responsibility or not?
So the source of the creek is on town property. That being said, it passes through other private properties prior to that. The creek has been there for quite a while, and the source has actually been there for quite a while as well, so it's not like there's anything new that's happened that's changed situations or circumstances. So I think it's a pretty far stretch to say that we would have, as a municipality, responsibility for erosion that's been occurring there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Pendleton?
No, Counselor King can go.
Counselor King?
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor.
The mayor recognized Councilor Pendleton. It's not your job. You recognize Pendleton, and that's...
Correct, but
I
Deputy
I
Mayor
can certainly give the
Syracuse,
floor to whomever I'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lewis. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the report. The only question I had in regards, only because you brought up some things in regards to Evergreen Walk. The only question I have is it possible to put more lights down by the Goddard School? Only because my wife and I walked it last week, and it was awesome. It was lit up.
Really great work with the people that we do have, and we have extremely talented staff.
Many, many years, and I know our community has grown along with economic development and our health department, and I know that they were asking and presenting how much work that they absolutely do. So, yes, I'd like to see a report that you could come up with or summarize which departments you feel may need some more staffing.
Sure.
Thank you. And I also heard, Mr. Maniscalco, that Whole Foods is opening January 17th?
Yes.
Any other questions for the town manager? Exceed 30 minutes. When recognized by the mayor, the speakers shall approach the lectern, give their name and address. Speakers shall avoid personal attacks or impugning, shall limit their speaking time to 5 minutes. You need to get the microphone on. There you go.
My name is Barry Bernstein, and I'm proud to be a resident in South Windsor. It's an extraordinary town that has a focus and a commitment to every aspect of what goes on in the town. The arts, sports, recreation, the committees like SWAF and shelters for the homeless and the feeding and the clothing. It's a wonderful town. The fact that the couple of years, at least, that it took everybody to come up with this over the last several regimes is amazing, what's in here. And I want to tell you that with the input you have from the town, I spent 37 years as an educator in Manchester as a coach, a teacher, and an administrator. And then I was 10 years in Enfield as the coordinator of athletics to merge the two high schools. And the reason I'm bringing those up is before that, we transitioned into getting turf fields in Manchester. And then when I went to Enfield, they wound up getting turf fields in both schools, not realizing they were going to wind up merging the schools. But the point is that with the turf field set up, there's so many opportunities in addition to the tennis courts, the pickleball courts, the things that have been put up are great. But having those turf fields for youth, for adults, and for high school, the sports, the recreational activities, the things that are out there are unbelievable. When you have those turf fields, they are marked and lined for every event that could be on it. And this is great because when you have a situation, a day like today or when you have rain like yesterday, events get canceled. If you have those turf fields and they're marked for all the different sports and activities that are on it, you don't have to worry about that. You can have a field hockey game off the field, 3 youth soccer games off the field, and you can keep rotating because the fields are permanently marked. Now, as far as the lights, it's a tremendous atmosphere for young kids and their families to experience them having an opportunity to play under the lights. I want to say that, again, it's not just athletics. What you folks have done for arts, for the homeless, for everything else makes South Windsor a wonderful place to be. Your commitment to changing the schools and the developments at Veterans Park, these are just symbols of what you're looking at future ahead, and the changing in the schools is fantastic. We need to keep this momentum going for arts, for the homeless, for those that need food and shelter, and for all of those that participate in recreational and activities that keep them and their families safe, healthy, and happy. This is a wonderful, committed town, and you have to continue what you people have started. I'm very thankful and pleased that you're moving in a positive direction, and I hope that all these opportunities come through because, again, South Windsor is a spectacular place to be at. but we need all these improvements to continue. The longer we wait, the more it costs, and also the less opportunities certain kids will have to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
My name is Elias Petgrave, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why the lit fields is a good idea. The first reason is that I cannot wait to play a night game on the new field. I know that even if kids do not play sports or are in different grades, they would still have a ton of fun at a night game. I am excited to play sports on the field now, and I am even more excited to play on the field when I get to high school. My second reason is that a lot of time people are not excited about small changes because they're not that big of a deal. But this change is a big change, and it changes a lot of things for kids and grown-ups. And I think everyone is excited for this big change. For example, my mom is president of South Windsor Panthers, and my dad is a football coach. Having this new field will help my mom, dad, and the Panthers with field space and give the high schoolers the sports fields and courts they deserve. My third reason is that the new lit turf field and the new tennis and pickleball courts will be used for a lot of different activities, such as soccer, lacrosse, and even more sports during camp in the summer. I think my brother Kyson, who is about to graduate from middle school, should have the opportunity to have the best fields available to him and his teammates because they worked hard and they deserve it. My sister's name is Olivia Peckert. She goes to CCSU and runs track for the Blue Devils. She also ran track for South Windsor High School. This is more important because the new turf field can help with track too. Also, it is easier for high school sports to be played at times where their parents can watch their kids after work. My parents and a lot of my friends' parents work really hard to make sure that our sports programs run well. For example, even when my mom is sick, she still has to go to sports meetings or solve a problem. I know my parents and a lot of other parents have been trying so hard to get better sports fields for their kids, including the high schoolers. Now is the time, and I wanted to make sure that you knew how important this is to me and all of the kids in South Windsor. Ladies and gentlemen, you are a part of our community, and as our grown-ups, we need you to help us get better sports fields. I am 8 years old, and I cannot vote yet, but if I could, I would vote yes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward?
Ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council, I am excited to stand before you to share the perspective.
Excuse me, can you say your name, please?
Yeah, I'm Jalen Schwartz on Griffin Road. I am excited to stand before you today to share the perspective of a student and player and from what I believe will greatly benefit our community. We moved to South Windsor 5 years ago. I arrived in the state not knowing anybody as our family relocated here due to my dad's job. Thanks to sports, I have made great friendships in this wonderful town. I am excited to hear the news that our town might be installing new lights on our high school football field. As a middle school student and now a passionate football player for the Panthers team, I have come to appreciate the sport. We, as a team, have experienced firsthand the limitations of having a field that is only available for use during the day, especially during winter months when the days are shorter. This year, our season ended on the first week of December. By adding lights on the high school turf football field, we can expand this playing time and create more opportunities for players to practice and compete limited hours. Limited hours not only limit our time on the field, but also limits our ability to enjoy the game. Installing lights on the football field would not only benefit us, the football players, but the entire community. The lights on the field will provide a safe and well-lit space for evening practices, night games will encourage a sense of community pride as we come together under the lights to cheer on our hometown players. Next year is my last year playing with the Panthers, and I would love nothing more to play here in our town versus on East Hartford turf. By investing in this project, the town would be investing in health and well-being of our community's future generations. I understand that there may be concerns, however, I believe that the long-term benefits will outweigh any challenges. I urge you, esteemed members of the Town Council, to seriously consider the proposal and the positive impact it could have on our community. Help us install lights on the high school football field so we can play our championships game at home.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward?
Hello, everybody. My name is Nahal Takran. I live 189 Skyline Drive, and I'm a student athlete at South Windsor High School. I'm in the 11th grade, and I play football. I've been playing for 7 years, and yeah, throughout my 3 years at the high school, I always heard complaints and questions wondering why we can't have night games like the other schools. When that question is answered, explaining how we don't have lights on our field, the next question is why. After understanding that there were people who would be bothered by the lights living behind the field, the concern among the student athletes that the school slowly faded away, and we kind of lost hope. But now, after hearing about the potential lighted field, all the hope has come back. Having a chance to play on a lighted turf field at home is something I've never experienced, but I'm hoping to. Not only would this feel more modern, but it would definitely raise our school spirit and make it easier for parents to attend. So as you may know, current game times are around 3 to 4 p.m., so the darkness doesn't affect the games, but these times make it very difficult for most parents to attend the games, as they may have work at those times or may not get out until later. The lit field would allow parents and family to attend the games at easier times for them and without having to rush home from work or anything like that. Along with this, students would have more fun attending, and a lighted field would raise school spirit heavily. The reason I'm saying this is because at away games, I've noticed 20 to 30 minutes away, we sometimes have more students in attendance than at our home games. The only clear reason for this is due to the time that the games are at and the lighted field. I personally think the environment it offers for games is just better, and it's just a better experience. So to wrap it all up, I would love to have at least one last game on that field, and would love for my little brother and all his teammates to enjoy South Windsor athletics in a way that I couldn't. This next year would most likely be my last year playing football, and therefore having this plan set into motion as soon as possible would be great. I'm really looking forward to playing on this new field for possibly one game. This would be the best for the future of the athletic program and the best for the future of the high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zach Smith, 49 Stevens Road. Good evening. First off, I would like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak about the new high school campus improvement plan at South Windsor High School. I would first like to introduce myself. My name is Zach Smith, and I am the sophomore quarterback on the South Windsor Bobcat football team. Secondly, I would also like to point out that amongst the teams that we compete against, we are one of the few teams that do not have lights. Considering that we made the playoffs this year, this is the best time for the town to install a new turf field with lights. Also, if we had made the playoffs this year and had been a 4 seed or higher, we would have needed to host a playoff game. Because we don't have lights, we wouldn't have been able to host it at South Windsor High School. We would have needed to go to East Hartford or Manchester or a different town just to host our playoff game. We play for a chance to have a home playoff game every single year. And because we don't have lights on our football field, we wouldn't have been able to play a home playoff game. South Windsor has made great advancements in our academics. Now let's pay it back to our athletics. This new field will benefit dozens of generations ahead of us, and will make our home games a more competitive atmosphere. At the end of every year, our last game is against Enfield, which is our rival school. This past year, we had the most amount of fans attend this game, and this was by far the best football atmosphere I have ever been a part of. I would also like to say a quote that has been preached to me ever since I was young. and that is, you play the way you practice. This new turf field will allow us to practice more efficiently and will help motivate us into the 2024-2025 football season. This will be the spark that will light the fire within our Bobcat football program. Thirdly, I would like to address the new second entrance to the high school. Not only will this make drop-off in the morning shorter, but it will also keep our students, including myself, at the high school safer. In conclusion of my speech, I would like to ask that we put this plan into the hands of the good people of South Windsor in the spring referendum on March 5th, 2024. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is DJ Prather. I'm at 11 Jessica Drive. I'm going to read my prepared remarks so I don't bust the clock here. Keep it under the 5 minutes. My wife and I have been residents of the town for about 20 years. She's originally from Michigan. I came here from Boston. We had no connection to this community when we moved here, and we feel extremely fortunate that we stumbled into South Windsor all those years ago. About 10 years ago, I started coaching youth sports. I'm currently the head football coach for the going to be for the A team for the Panthers program, and I'm the VP of the program as well. And one of the things I try and emphasize with our kids is that in addition to being good leaders, good citizens, and good teammates, is that in youth sports, you're only more than just teammates because your relationships don't end when the season ends or when you leave the field. They share classrooms together, birthday parties, sleepovers, everything, you name it. They're around each other all the time. So I try to emphasize to them that they're more than just the teammates, they're life mates. Their support for each other doesn't end when they leave the sideline or the classroom. They need to always be looking out for each other, pushing and pulling each other forward. Now, that's particularly important for kids because the world is constantly getting bigger, from elementary school to middle school to high school to college, and then from college to the whole world. And good life mates are important for that journey. Our job as a community is to help them develop into good citizens and then be good life mates to help each other as they go forward. And for those of us that have made that journey and been lucky enough to find someone and settle down, you realize that the world starts to become small again. Less traveling, less partying, becomes more about your family unit and guiding your young ones. And then those life mates become important again because of the people you chose to raise your family with. I found mine in this community. This is where this project becomes personal to me because I see these fields as an intersection of our community. Those of us for whom the world is getting bigger and for those of us who the world is getting smaller. It's a cross-section where we can come together and support each other and the young people we're raising and preparing for a bigger world. All good communities have a place like this for us all to come together. This is a great community. And I know that if this is put to a vote, South Windsor will come together and show us as much. I very much look forward to attending events at this field for years to come and supporting every generation of South Windsor. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tim Downs. I'm born and raised in this town. I've lived in this town for over 50 years. I've seen a lot of growth in this town, good and bad, and it's like we're antiquated right now. We're behind times. Why we can't have a field like this? Athletics is just as important as the academics are. Everything everybody said has made a lot of sense. I don't know if it's because taxes or whatever it is. South Windsor's never been a small town when it comes to taxes anyway, so I just want to reiterate, there's no reason why we can't do this. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else like to come forward?
Good evening. Eric Mahan, 50 Henry Road. I'm fully in support of the campus improvement proposal that's coming forward. I do want to emphasize that again. I know we talk a lot about the lighted field, but there are other things in there. The new entrance, the tennis courts, which have been neglected for a very long time, so it would be great to support those athletes and people in town that play tennis, and the growing pickleball community. So there are definitely things there. Someone mentioned at the Board of Ed meeting that the PE classes could use those and add pickleball to the curriculum. And Dr. Carter's got a presentation that she's going to give, and I've seen it. It's fantastic. It has some very compelling numbers as far as the DRG, as far as our conference, and things like that. I'm going to add just another number. 135 schools played football this past year. And I was tempted to read off all of the ones that had lighted fields and played night games, but I thought it would be a little tedious. I thought it might drive home the point, but it would be a little tedious and take up all of the time. But it's well over 100, probably close to 120. And the schools that are on there are Bridgeport Central, Hartford Public now has lights, and Northwest Catholic, or places, private schools, Woodstock Academy. Most towns, pretty much every town in the state. So it's not a Hartford thing, it's not a local thing. Pretty much everybody has this and has these opportunities. And these towns have decided that they want or need and that their students deserve these opportunities and that their communities deserve that. So I think these guys out here that have shown up and did some great presentations, they deserve the same opportunities. And it's too late for my children. I've been at this for 15 years. It's come and gone. But I'm still here because I believe in this. And I think it will be great for these kids. And it will be great for the community. Nothing promotes the community like sports. I'm a chemistry professor. So I really love STEM things. I also support the arts and believe in the arts. But, I mean, let's face it, people aren't in Stop and Shop asking each other who their favorite scientist is or who their favorite, chemist is. It's, oh, what about the Patriots? What about the Sox? What about the Yankees? That's what brings people together. We can have people out here on Friday nights enjoying, a great game. It's not all about football. It will help some of the other sports as well immensely. Going back to a proposal that Ray Favreau gave about 5 years ago, just talking about some of the different issues, the MPF, multipurpose field that's at the high school, multipurpose field, I like to call it minimally played field, because as Ray presented in 2018 spring season, the field was closed for 16 days. So there's one field down the drain. Fall of 2018, the field was closed 14 times during an 11-week season for soccer and field hockey. So that's basically almost once a week there was a field that was not available to those athletes. You wouldn't have that with a turf field. You'd have more opportunities for the students to get on there, the youth programs to get on there, so they're not practicing in an island at Rye Street that's used for parking, that's uneven. We have tennis courts that have problems. The next thing we're going to have a lawsuit when somebody turns an ankle or gets hurt worse because of some type of injury. So this is something that just goes beyond, a lot of parents saying, oh, this would be great, we want to be like other towns. Because there are other towns back in 2018, if I can find it quickly. Hartford Public was adding lights then. New Britain, Plainville, and Farmington have 2 fields with lights. New Britain, Plainville, Farmington, Platt, and Maloney have access to 2 or more turf fields. Glastonbury was approved for a second turf field. In our DRG, 6 schools have 2 turf fields with lights. 2 had 3 with lights. 9 schools have access to 2 fields with lights. So it's not as if we're trying to be the one that is outshining everybody else. We just want the opportunities for our students and our student athletes. And, I get spending, nobody likes to spend money. I've planned lots of times not to spend money, but sometimes my oil tank or my tires or brakes or whatever don't always agree with me. There's never going to be a perfect time to say, oh, we're going to spend this money. So we have to decide that this is something that we believe in for our students and our athletes and try to get it done and the rest of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for items on the agenda?
Hello, my name is Rob Tarantino, Main Street, South Windsor. I moved to this town when I was in first grade, when I went to Pleasant Valley. Lived here pretty much my whole life. I'm coming from a slightly different angle. I'm coming from the angle of lacrosse. South Windsor, when I was in freshman, was the 3rd year of varsity lacrosse that we've ever had. Connecticut has a tremendous history of lacrosse. I think the school having a second turf field would be a tremendous opportunity for the youth lacrosse program to practice earlier in the season. Many times throughout the spring, so let me just backpedal just a moment. I'm also a coach. I've been involved with the youth lacrosse program for the last 10 years. I've had 3 kids that come through that program. I'm still coaching to this day. Many times in the spring, similar to the conversation about the fields being closed down, our youth misses out on practice opportunities because Rye Street gets closed down. We also don't get out as early as other towns because the other towns have access to turf fields, dry environments for them to practice, where we have to start a lot later in the season. And we do get the opportunity to go play in a non-field location, which is Rye Street on the island, but it's not ideal. It does give us the opportunity to get out there as a program, but again, it's not ideal. We're really behind many other towns when it comes to our start times. So I just want to express that it would be a tremendous opportunity for the lacrosse team to get out earlier in the spring. It would also be a really nice opportunity for us to have some evening games like we do at some other in some other towns. When we travel as an organization to places like Newington or West Hartford, early in the season, before the clocks turn, we're limited by the light, and so we're unable to play as late as some other locations around the state, where we could have those opportunities to play here in South Windsor on our own in our own town. So I just want to express that it is very important, not just for football. I think it's wonderful how many football people are coming out to support this, but there's other programs that could really benefit from a second turf field as well as lights, since the days are still short in the spring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? Going once? Going twice? 3 times. All right, thank you. Moving on. Item 13C. Proposed athletic field and high school campus improvements. Dr. Carter?
Good evening, Mayor Delnicki, Deputy Mayor Siracusa, and Town Council members. At the Board of Education's October 19th meeting, I presented a plan to improve our high school campus and increase recreational assets for the community. I shared a conceptual timeline for the board's consideration for approval and ultimately the Town Council's approval of a referendum should they choose to send the question to the community. At the board's October 24th meeting, the board voted unanimously to approve the plan. At the board's November 28th meeting, I updated the board that after consultation with both of our town's registrars, the proposed date for the referendum would need to occur on March 5th rather than March 12th due to the state's recent change of date for the presidential primary. At the board's December 12th meeting, I presented the plan for a second time, and the board voted unanimously to formally request that the Town Council set a referendum date of March 5th. Tonight, I have been asked to share the plan again for members of the public who may not have seen these earlier presentations or the related materials that are on our website. Certainly, the desire for a lighted athletic field has been voiced by many residents over decades. In addition to a widespread community request, the planning for a lighted field has officially appeared in the last two strategic plans that you see on the screen. When the Board of Education adopted the 2019-2022 strategic plan, it called for researching the feasibility of improvements to the campus, including installation of a lighted athletic field. The most recent strategic plan that was adopted last January is even more explicit. It directs me and my team to propose a location for a lighted field, increase the quality and quantity of fields, install new post-tension concrete tennis courts to replace those that are in disrepair. Tonight's presentation is a response to those strategic planning directives. The plan itself has three major pillars: the installation of 7 new tennis courts, as well as the addition of 4 new pickleball courts, a lighted multi-purpose turf field, and a plan for addressing the long-standing traffic issues at the high school. Let's take a look at the first pillar. The tennis courts at the high school are over 50 years old and in major disrepair. Students and families have come to Board of Education meetings to express their concerns about the unsafe conditions of the courts. Building new courts in a new location is an investment long overdue. When not in use by physical education classes or the high school tennis team, these courts will serve as a recreational asset for the entire community. And as many of you are aware, pickleball fever has swept South Windsor and is the fastest growing sport in the nation. The addition of 4 pickleball courts, wow, that was a short presentation. No. The addition of 4 pickleball courts will not only serve our students, but its close proximity to the community center will serve many of our seniors. The proximity to the community center will also allow the high school to launch an intergenerational wellness club, connecting high school students with seniors through healthy activities such as pickleball will benefit both our students and our seniors. We are excited about this potential partnership with the community center. Now let's take a look at the second pillar, the long-awaited lighted multi-purpose field. As previously mentioned, the desire for a lighted athletic field has been communicated by many stakeholders over many years, even decades. It's certainly a reasonable request considering how many other towns have had lighted fields for years. In fact, South Windsor High School is the only high school in its district reference group, Durg B, that does not have a lighted athletic field. 20 of the 21 towns in our Durg have a lighted field. As you can see on this next slide, out of the 29 public high schools in the Central Connecticut Conference, South Windsor High School is only one of 3 schools that does not have a lighted field. And just for clarification, the presence of a lighted field is not an asset only found at large high schools or within communities with more resources. Other high schools much smaller than us have a lighted field. As you can see, there are only 5 towns in Durg B that have larger high schools than South Windsor, and there are 13 high schools that have smaller high schools than South Windsor that already have a lighted field, including the smallest high school in our Durg, Granby, that has a lighted field despite only having approximately 550 students. It is also true that there are many communities with far fewer resources than South Windsor that already have a lighted field. It is also worth remembering that every town in Durg B spends more per pupil than South Windsor. The Board of Education has been excellent financial stewards, and this investment is well-timed and warranted. A second turf field will address the long-standing problem of an inadequate number of fields. We have both a quality and a quantity issue when it comes to our athletic fields at the high school. Currently, it is difficult to have enough fields available for our teams. This problem will only be exacerbated by our increasing enrollment. The high school's enrollment as of October 1, 2023 was 1,378 students and is projected to grow by an additional 460 students by 2032. If we do not have enough fields today, we certainly will not have enough when we increase by 460 more students. And the final pillar of the 3-part plan is traffic safety. Anyone who has observed pickup and drop-off at the high school knows that traffic on Ayers Road is a major problem. It is not just inconvenient. The congestion is a safety issue, and over the years, there have been both car accidents as well as pedestrian injuries. Constructing a driveway from Ayers Road along the annex parking lot and connecting to the existing parking lots at the high school will mitigate the traffic caused by having only one entry point to the high school. A second entry point to the high school campus will reduce the number of cars backed up on Ayers Road, which in turn will help to alleviate the congestion on Nevers Road. This solution was discussed as part of the most recent traffic study conducted by Milone and McBroom in 2020. An added bonus, this driveway would allow for better emergency and fire truck access to the annex, and it improves the location of the current crosswalk on Ayers. Now that we have reviewed the overall plan, let's take a look at the steps that would need to occur for construction to happen this summer. If the timeline that you see there, I'll highlight just a few. If the board's request is supported, the town council would set the referendum date of March 5th at its January 16th meeting. The council would need to approve putting the question out to the community on January 16th in order to ensure the referendum is set at least 30 days in advance of a referendum date, which is required. It is important to note that the suggested date for the referendum is intentionally aligned with the district's professional development day so that students are not in school during voting. In addition, a spring referendum is fiscally responsible because it allows the construction to begin very soon after the approval of funds, which will mitigate escalation costs. Because this must be a summer project for safety reasons, we are restricted as to when construction can occur. If the project is not done this summer, it will need to be postponed an entire year until the summer of 2025. It is important to understand that delaying the project adds significant costs. Professionals estimate that the project cost could increase by 12 to 15% due to escalation, which could add approximately $1 million to the budget. There are many ways that the public has already had access to information about the project, which includes the Board of Education's strategic plan and the recently televised board meetings, which are posted on our website. A link to the entire plan document is also posted on the district's website. In addition, there were residents voicing their rationale for supporting the project at the Town Council's December 2nd meeting, a recording of which is posted on the town's website. I have also reached out to school and community organizations to share information about the plan. As you can see on this slide, there has already been a great deal of outreach, and that process continues. I have already met with the Ellsworth Pickleball Club, the leadership of American Legion Post 133, and South Windsor Youth Football. In January, I will be meeting with seniors at the community center on 2 different dates, presenting to the South Windsor High School PAC, meeting with PTO presidents district-wide, and will be meeting with the South Windsor Soccer Club. I have also sent the electronic version of the plan to the Chamber of Commerce and South Windsor's Communities Women's Club. If there are any other community groups who would like me to send information, I would be happy to do so. At this time, I will turn things over to Chris Hulk from Field Turf, who will review the cost of the project as well as the site plans and the proposed construction schedule. Following Chris Hulk, Mr. Rizzuto will share his perspective as high school principal, and Mr. Caldwell, superintendent of parks, will share his insights regarding current conditions of our fields and tennis courts.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. That was tremendous, as always. For the council, I'm Chris Hulk. I'm the Director of Design and Construction for Field Turf. I'm also a licensed professional engineer here in Connecticut. So you can see before you, this is the estimated cost of the investment on the improvements to the campus. The top one there, you can see is a lighted multi-purpose turf field. For clarity, that also includes bleachers, press box, all the utilities surrounding the site, removals, basically soup to nuts to get from the existing tennis court facility that you have now to a usable turf field. The new tennis pickleball courts would be a post-tension concrete set of courts. Pickleball would also be post-tension, as opposed to the paved surfaces that you're familiar with now that have the separation that's happening between courts and tend to break down much more quickly. One of the major improvements as well for tennis is that currently there's 6 tennis courts. There's 7 tennis matches that happen during an event, which means one of the people or matches has to wait for a match to be completed to be able to do their match, extending the time frame that they're there. So we're going to be improving that to be 7 to be able to have a court for each of the matches. The last one there being the driveway and mitigation of the traffic. That also includes all of the removals, the trees, the dumpsters, the striping plan, everything that goes along with those things. You might be asking yourself how we came up with these numbers. So we do these projects all over the place. My territory happens to be New England. In Connecticut last year, we did somewhere between 15 and 20 of very similar aspects of these types of projects. So we are basing these off of numbers that we have access to for the multitude of various projects that we do. The last number there you can see is fees, consulting, contingency. As part of any good project, you want to make sure that you are preparing yourself. The computer restarted. So speaking of things that might be unforeseens, that would be what the contingency is for. So we'll just give this a minute to reboot, and then we'll pop back to the slides. So yeah, for any unforeseens, that's what the contingency would be based on. So to give a little bit of background about the overall site, here you can see an aerial photo of your GIS system. Online, this one's from 1966. To draw attention to a couple things, the box up in the top left corner would be where the lighted turf field would go. You can see there the tennis courts are actually being built along with the basketball court that's there. The Little League field already being in existence. Same thing with the Wapping paved parking lot there. So those have been around since the 60s. The bottom right-hand corner, you can see at that time was a parking lot for students, I believe. Is now being used for throwing events and is basically just a grass field there. But the site has been developed for quite a number of years. And just to bring a little bit of background to the tennis courts, as you can see there, being well over 50 years old, the same access that you need today is the same access you need back then, being you have to walk down a grass slope about a 20 to 30 foot drop off. It's about 300 to 400 feet from the parking lot, the nearest point, to the tennis courts. So we wanted to make sure that we did what we could to improve that aspect as well. Here is basically the overall site plan for the lighted turf field. So one of the things that is always difficult to do when you're trying to come up with appropriate budgets for projects like this is to know what you're getting yourself into. Dr. Carter has done a great job and also with us to do everything we can to put together a full design package that the numbers are actually based on. We're not just pie in the sky about what we think these things are going to work with. Full design that is as the price has been based on. To develop this plan, we've done test pits out on the site so we know what our soil conditions are like. We've met with the police department, we've met with town staff, we've had various meetings with school staff to make sure that we are touching on everything that needs to happen. Because there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's the driveway that's going to do a great job to improve the traffic. The lighted turf field, which a lot of the community members have said that they're very excited about. But also knowing that in order to make the lighted turf field work here, Where it doesn't work anywhere else on site is that we can maintain the distance to the property lines that's part of your zoning regulations. Zoning regulations require that athletic field lighting be a minimum of 100 feet from a property line. That's why you can't light the track and field, and that's why it works on this site. One of the other major key components to be aware of about this particular site is we reviewed every other site on the campus that would be adequate for size-wise to have a field. There's nowhere else on campus where you can have a field and not lose a field by doing this development. This is the only spot where you're not swapping out field for field, and with the need for additional field space, this is the only location on the site that is adequate for both lights and you add a field. So one of the things that happens with developing that parcel, obviously, is the need to do the improvements to the tennis courts. As we mentioned, the courts are significantly old. Here, what we'd be able to do is take that old parking lot, now just where they do the throwing events, be able to move the throwing events across the driveway so that they can still be on the grass surface just across the driveway. Have the 7 new post-tension concrete courts, have parking available right at the courts, both for anybody coming down and also for ADA accessibility, and then also have the post-tension pickleball courts there. This particular location just works really well because it's been developed multiple different ways, multiple different times, and it actually just fits everything, oddly enough, very well. So limited the most amount of impact to the site by being able to put this here while also being able to get the lighted turf field where the existing tennis courts are. So a little bit about what we thought as far as the proposed construction timeline. With the referendum in March, that would allow construction to begin in April. What we would be able to do there is plan with the athletic program to make sure we had the least amount of impact on the overall site. So first thing that we would do is relocate the throwing events, start the construction of the new tennis and pickleball courts. That work would be kind of away from the school, kind of down next to the roadway, allowing school operations to continue pretty much unimpeded. That would also allow the current tennis program to not be impeded and not have to go off-site, or I guess to a different town to do their competition. Will allow them to complete their whole season before we would start doing construction on that area. So, and then when we get to June, now we're going to start to do the installation of the new tennis courts, building of the retaining walls, and doing some of the major site work that we would need to do for the stadium field. In July would be the heavy construction activities when we're both finishing up the new tennis courts, also working on making sure all the cuts and fills are done, that the wall is built, and that the driveway is based out so that we can make sure that that driveway is functional for when school starts. In August, we project that to be the installation of the bleachers and the press box, the athletic field lighting, making sure the driveway is done so that the paving operations are complete prior to school starting, both so that staff has enough time to do some dry runs and get acquainted with the site and people can be familiar with it. As we get into September, October, that's when we'd be finishing up the project, finishing up the turf, putting the turf down, doing any sort of punch list items that might be part of the project, so that when the senior games start to come around towards the middle of October or so, that we would be in a position that they could actually get games on the lighted turf field, hopefully underneath the lights. But we've done a great deal of work at this point in research, development of the plans, and thought this construction timeline out very in-depthly with the school. So a lot of work has gotten to get to this point. And I will turn it over to.
Thank you, Mr. Hulk. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Good evening to the Town Council. Before I continue with our presentation, I'd like to thank our Superintendent, Dr. Carter, for her time, effort, and commitment to this plan, as it is quite thorough. From my perspective, this proposal provides comprehensive solutions to help address multiple challenges for high school programming and the physical campus. It addresses needs, not desires. These needs include providing much-needed traffic relief for the benefit of all stakeholders, the provision of new tennis courts, new pickleball courts, and an additional turf field to include lights. It is this last topic that I would like to provide additional perspective on. If a new turf field with lights were to be approved, it would provide opportunities for multiple sports to have night games such as football, field hockey, soccer, and lacrosse. This is an element that is commonplace to high schools and community-based athletics programs throughout the nation, but unfortunately is not the case as of yet in the town of South Windsor. For high school athletics in particular, it is no surprise to many why high school events are held under the lights. First, it is family-friendly, as it allows more parents to see their children compete at a time that is more convenient for their work schedules. Second, it affords tremendous flexibility when it comes to scheduling contests and/or providing practice times for multiple sports programs. Third, a new turf field addresses a very functional need: adequate field access for our high school programs. A turf field drains much more efficiently after rain. Currently, heavy rain renders our grass fields unplayable, sometimes for days. This puts our teams at a distinct disadvantage compared to other high schools who have multiple fields or facilities for their programs to continue on with their practices unimpeded. The need for an additional field with lights is not only recognized by our superintendent, myself as the principal, our athletic director, countless student athletes, families, coaches, and community members, but other eyes as well. I call attention to the most recent New England Association of Schools and Colleges visit, which occurred in 2018. NEASC is the accreditation agency for its member schools. At the conclusion of a site visit, the NEASC committee provides a report including its recommendations, which is priceless in helping the school prioritize its next steps for improvement. One significant recommendation focused specifically on athletics facilities, which you see before you. Develop and implement a plan to ensure that the school's playing fields support athletic activities. This next slide contains excerpts from the same NEASC report. While these excerpts are powerful in and of themselves, I'd like to share with you the larger narrative and context they were part of to allow for more flesh on these bones. Quote, "The outdoor playing fields require upgrades in order to fully meet students' needs. Specifically, the school's turf playing field lacks lighting, which significantly limits opportunities for students to practice or host athletic games in the late afternoon and evening in the fall and spring. As a result, the school essentially loses a playing field due to darkness every day, limiting or even preventing some teams from fully participating. The school's soccer field lacks the necessary drainage to keep the surface playable after inclement weather, making it unusable for practice or games for extended amounts of time during the fall and spring. Limitations to the school's playing fields limit the full delivery of the curriculum and other learning opportunities," end quote. That is a recommendation that speaks for itself, and a new turf field with lights will clearly address the need and put student athletes from our town on a literal and proverbial same playing field as those from the grand majority of towns in our DERG and in our conference. If passed, though there would be the ability to have lighted contests, this would not mean that all of our athletic events would be taking place in the evening. This would not be the case, as this would mean later nights for our student athletes, and they are students first, before being athletes. But having the ability to host games under the lights and to have an additional field would be a literal game changer for multiple athletic programs. Similar to the guidelines we use for our current turf field, there will be an ongoing commitment to being a good neighbor for nearby homes to the proposed new turf field. To ensure this, the high school programs will continue to adhere to the start and end time parameters that already exist as part of our current turf field regulations. Thank you, and at this time I turn things over to Mr. Caldwell.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Delnicki, Deputy Mayor Syracuse, and members of the Town Council. As I said, my name is John Caldwell. I'm the Superintendent of Parks for South Windsor, and I'm very passionate about our town. I've lived here for 40 years. I am employed with the town now for 24 years, and I've been the superintendent since 2010. I'm very proud of what the Park Department has accomplished since 2010, since we became the Parks Department. But as Mike said, we still work with Public Works very closely for all storms and winter and leaf program. But our fields have come an awful long way since 2010. I used to sit with the soccer club and I was told, schedule away, South Windsor fields aren't worth playing on. Well, that was one of our big goals, was to make that not true. I've done some research recently, and I've tried to find out when we've had any new athletic fields or new space, and I'm going back to 1960, and I have not found any new areas. Rye Street has evolved over the years. In 2003 and 4, it had some major improvements with irrigation, grading, to the practice football field, and to the soccer side of things. We've recently added new LED lighting to the field, and that has made things much better also for the neighbors, because the new LED lighting is a zero emittance. When you come past the field, you really don't see any more sports lightings. We've actually lost some space over years. Union School used to have a soccer field behind it. VMP used to have a field on it for soccer and for baseball. And because VMP, which is a good thing, has become so popular that it's not safe for play anymore there for children. The Wapping tennis courts, have everybody's heard, they are pretty old. They're 50 years old, and they're built on what's called bituminous concrete, which is blacktop. Wapping tennis courts have had their share of play, and they're pretty much to their life expectancy has come to an end. We put approximately $20,000 per year, every year, into the courts, whether it's TE or Wapping. The majority of the money usually goes to Wapping. This year's quote to make repairs to those tennis courts is $42,459, and this does not include any repairs to the TE courts. The Board of Ed's proposal has a multi-use synthetic field, 4 post-tension concrete pickleball courts, 7 post-tension concrete tennis courts. One of the things, I don't know if it was told, our new pickleball courts at Rye Street are exploding with play. Post-tension concrete comes with a 10-year warranty, with an extended warranty of 10 more years past that if you follow all the manufacturer's specs. And that's something that we plan on doing with our pickleball courts at Rye Street. Wapping tennis court is almost to the point of no return. Like I said, it's a 50-year-old blacktop tennis court that when we make a repair, it's kind of like putting sheetrock over a wall, and we just keep putting sheetrock tape and paint on it. The synthetic field that we currently have has shown to be an asset to the community, because we've never closed it due to any weather conditions other than snow, but it also helps baseball in early spring and some of the other tryouts, such as youth football and soccer. We'll use it when our fields are closed. And yes, I've heard we've closed the field 10 times, 15 times. We closed the fields 11 times this year due to weather. 2 of those times were actually for a 2-day period. We have had, I think we were 16 inches above rainfall. We've made some serious improvements to the MPF field and its drainage problems during its first few years of its build. But they're right, I do close the fields a lot because, number one, it's not safe for play. Number 2, they just can't handle it. Like I tell Sam all the time, Petgrave, that if you want to play on dirt, it's easy for us to manage, but they've always respected everything that I've asked them to do. They've been a great community. Our crew has done a great job. And another synthetic field and the tennis courts and the pickleball courts will help all the community. It will also take some pressure off of our current grass fields. And I know the question that the council is going to be thinking and they're going to ask is how will this impact the Parks Department budget-wise and employee-wise? We have had 10 employees. In 2000, we had 10 employees. I have asked for employees year after year after year. We currently have 12. And as I've said, our department does a fantastic job with what they have. Our town manager has given us some of the tools and budget that we need to do our job. This will not really affect the Parks Department as far as labor or as far as money. We do take care of the synthetic field currently now, but we also don't have some of the issues that we have with a grass field. I know some people call it turf. The grass people really get mad when you call it turf because turf is grass. So the synthetic field will actually take pressure off. We do groom the field once a month, but we also mow a grass field 3 times a week. The tennis courts at Wapping actually have a grass area inside the tennis courts that we have to maintain, and we have to weed whack and maintain all along the outside of the pickleball, the tennis courts that we currently have. The new proposal actually could take a little bit of heat off of us, but it won't affect us as far as budgetary-wise and employee-wise. But the town has grown exponentially, and we are doing everything we can to keep up with it. And this is one of the things that I feel strongly that the town does need and deserve, and all the kids, and my grandkids. Thank you very much.
Before I turn things over to Mr. Maniscalco, I want to close by thanking the town staff from the Police Department, Engineering Department, and Planning Department for their assistance in developing this plan. I want to thank Mr. Maniscalco and Mrs. Patty Perry for their calculation of the tax impact. I also want to thank Field Turf for their expertise, without which we could not have gotten to this point in the process. Finally, I am pleased to see so much excitement for the plan among so many different stakeholders. It's always a win for a community when individuals who benefit are varied and intergenerational, inclusive of all ages, levels ranging from our youngest athletes to our active seniors and high-end users of the community center. At this point, I will turn things over to Mr. Maniscalco.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I believe there we go. So essentially what we've done is put together a tax impact chart. This is a similar chart that we do for most of the referendum questions that come out. Essentially, as you can see on the left side of the column, there is your home market value. Then the next column is your taxable assessed value, so that's the 70%. And then the 3 yearly costs of what you would end up seeing as an impact to taxpayers. We like to focus on home market value of $350,000, as that's kind of the average value of homes within our community, which gives you a taxable assessed value of $245,000, which means in the year 2026, you would have a $4.90 impact as a result of the project of $7.5 million. I think it's important, a couple things to point out in terms of talking about tax impact in year 2026. The impact to the community for this project, if it were to be constructed over the coming summer, would occur in the year of 2026 because of the way we finance our projects. Essentially what we will end up doing is we'll end up floating the actual costs over the coming year out of our savings account or our general fund account, and then financing it in 2025 with the debt actually hitting in 2026, in the budget year 2026. We also would end up having 3 years of increases in taxes as a result, so it would be $4.90 in the year 2026. Then we would see $36.75 in 2027, and then in 2028, it's $44.10 with a total cost of $85.75 over that 3 years. That being said, it's important that everybody understands that while you have 3 years of tax increases, you still have an additional 17 years of tax payments that would have to be paid for the project overall. So you would be paying for the project over the life of the 20-year bonds that were issued. On an average monthly basis, you're looking at about $2.38 total. I believe that covers everything I have, and I can answer any questions for the council or anybody else. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Carter or the town manager? Councilor Balboni?
Yes, very nice presentation, Dr. Carter. Thank you. My first question actually was asked by Chairman Meneely at the October 19th meeting, and actually kind of interests me as to getting a hold of private and or corporate sponsors, maybe to make a Coca-Cola field or an Amazon field, something like that. Have we started to look into that? I believe you said after you got board support, you were going to start looking into that.
I think if I did say board, I should also mean town council. I feel it would be a little premature or disingenuous until we have a signal that this is supported by the council. I would not want to approach a corporate organization for a project that might ultimately not get supported. So as soon as we're told that this is going to be supported, we would certainly approach some corporate sponsors. I think our project will be attractive because it is shovel-ready. It's not maybe in a few years would you want to contribute. It's we have an exciting plan and want to show it to you, which is in part why I made these brochures to bring to those corporate sponsors. I do want to caution you, however, it's not my recommendation that we move forward with a lower cost center, even if we have a very strong prospect for a sponsor. If the community approves bonding the funds and we did get some corporate sponsorship or some things to offset the costs, it just means you wouldn't have to bond as much. So just like some of our school construction projects came under budget, if we were to have some offsets, then we would be able to, the taxpayers would enjoy those savings, but I think it would be fiscally prudent to secure the total funds for the project. And the other way to look at it too is if for some reason we were to get corporate sponsorships, we have value engineered several things out of this project. So there could be other things that corporate sponsors could contribute to, such as the lockers and the storage. That's something that would be important. But in the end, we wanted to come to you with as tight a budget as we could, so we did take those out. So something like that may be something that corporate sponsorship could support.
Thank you.
Who's first? Councilor Evans? No.
Let me
go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I just wanted to, I think back on when I first joined the Board of Ed, and this has been an ongoing discussion since I was on the Board of Ed in 2017. And I think at that time, really, we were looking at lighting the current field. Could you just talk about why there's been this shift from the current field to this overall plan and what the cost of that would be versus, well, we know the cost of this, but the cost of that and how that impacts?
So certainly, and I don't know why this wasn't clearer back then, but it's become clearer to me through talking with the planning department. The current stadium field does not meet the P&Z regulations for the buffer, so we would have had to have gotten an exception. And I'm told that we would likely not get that exception because I don't want to, hopefully I'm not misquoting, but I believe we have to be 100 feet off, and I think in that scenario we're somewhere between 12 and 20. So we just really didn't meet the planning and zoning regulations to put lights there. This field does meet the requirement. We will not need an exception. We certainly have to go through P&Z, but it will not require an exception to the rules of buffer zones, which is why this is a preferred location for the field.
Thank you. I think of, so my family spends a lot of time there at the tennis courts and at the baseball field. There is one house very close to where the tennis courts currently end. Would something be done along that area for that one? I mean, I'm assuming based on what you said, the distance requirements are met, but would there be anything done in that area for that one section?
I will look to see if that is already in the plans. I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe that resident is actually someone who's come in support of the plan. So I'm sure that they would also appreciate that, but I also believe that resident, I think if we're talking about the same house. I can refer to Chris for any buffer and plantings.
Thank you again, Chris Hulk. I'm the Director of Design and Construction for Field Turf. I'll just click back to the site plan here. So one of the things that we did tried really hard not to do is to have any impact on the existing tree line that's there. A lot of times, for putting one of these types of fields, you have to take down some trees. Here, there's a lot of mature existing vegetation, so those will act as a good amount of screening there as well. So we don't need to do any clearing. And then one of the other things that we are planning to do is, as a cost savings measure, is to keep all the topsoil on site. So one of the things that we're going to do with that topsoil is to actually create a berm, one along Ayers Road, and then whatever other material that we have left over, we can create a berm basically around the edges of the site to sort of help screen the field from the neighbors. We do have some screening plantings along Ayers Road, but some of the major things that we've tried to do is to limit any impact on the existing tree line. We do have fencing going around the majority of the site and maintaining some of the existing fencing that's there now. But yeah, the not having an impact on the existing vegetation, I think, is the biggest one we could do.
Thank you. Sounds like the neighbors are in favor of us, so that's great. I think of the three, when I was looking at the new outline, and looking at three things that are going to change or impact is we won't have a basketball court, the baseball field, and the playground. I'm assuming the playground we don't need. I know there's a preschool program run. I don't know if they utilize that. Are those three things going to be put in elsewhere, or?
Sure. So I'll start with the ones that are clearer known, and then the one that's lesser known at this point. The Little League field that will be displaced, I have spoken with the leadership at Little League, and their first choice for replacement is to make improvements at the Eli Terry field that exists. So that will be a very low-cost solution to providing them with a newly addressed John Caldwell will make it real nice, and that was their first choice for a location, and I think our preferred choice as well. You asked about the basketball court. We don't have it on the plans now, and that does need further discussion. The basketball courts at the high school are the only area that is not associated with a supervised team. So we do have some issues with supervision and things that happen. But all of these other fields are associated with coaches and things like that. So I don't think it's that there won't be a basketball court in this plan on our campus, but we have yet to determine that. That's a much smaller project to do, and we just need more time to think about that. There was a third item.
The playground.
Oh, yes. So you alluded to it. So our program at the high school where students learn about preschool-age children has been relocated to the high school annex, formerly known as Wapping School. And so there is a plan to bring more equipment over there because we can be relocating playground equipment that's at TE that is no longer needed at that site because they have moved to PB.
Well aware of that too with my family. Looking at the proposed construction timeline, each of these months impacts different sports programs. So like in May, that field for baseball, I'm assuming they'll have the Eli Terry field up and running for them through the spring. The June and July, the Park and Rec summer programs, especially the tennis courts, they use those for the summer Park and Rec programs. And then the football season, based on this timeline, it looks like the football program won't really be able to use it next fall. Is that all accurate? And
depending on the timeline, it's possible they may get some playing time in. I wouldn't want to guarantee that. I think we need to think of the worst case scenario with delays and things, but I believe Field Turf thinks there will be some activity in play later in the season. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The month of October, we have planned for what we're calling punch list, so finished little cleanup items, also installation of the turf itself. Based on a lot of the projects that we've done previously and this last couple of years, we found that we can get the field and the field installed to a playable level. It's making sure that we have enough buffer time in there to make sure that the lights are up, that the bleachers are in, and that the school is comfortable with allowing the kids to be able to use the facilities. But we do feel pretty strongly that at the very least, some of the senior night games are going to be able to be used there, not just for the football team, but also for soccer and some of the other fall sports.
And if we make that championship playoff game, we would be able to host it. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Everyone says yes.
And then my only other question, the lower field, is that turf or is that grass? Is it synthetic grass or natural grass?
The new proposed field?
The one down next to the pickleball courts.
Yeah,
Yep, that's an existing grass practice field,
It'll maintain natural grass.
maintained as natural grass.
Thank you. And then looking at, so like the CCC, that stands for the conference we're in. Are we in Conference L currently? Yes? Okay, well then that kind of answers my next question, because based on our projected increasing enrollment, we are going to be moving double L very quickly. And how do we compare to double L schools with lighted fields? Do we know that?
Mr. Rizzuto, could you please put the mic on? Thank you.
My apologies. Yeah, so it'll be same but different. So many of the schools that were recorded as part of the CCC and even outside of the CCC, whether they are double L or L, the grand majority of them will be lighted.
Okay. Thank you. You know, working in a district currently that has a turf field, a lighted field, it is a culture, it's a community environment. You know, I really look forward to seeing this project. So thank you for presenting.
Councilor Braganski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Just a quick question. I noticed that you have approved the strategic plan through 2026 or so. Just curious if there are going to be any large budget items that will be coming through, renovations, expansions, additions that we should be prepared for?
No, there's nothing in the works right now that, I think what you're asking, will there be significant construction needed for growing enrollment? Is that the question? Currently, the addition of the annex has helped greatly at the high school. At the middle school, right now, the only area that we're truly concerned about is the cafeteria. It's been difficult to run the lines, even with the numbers we have today, let alone the growing numbers. There is a plan in place to expand that caf, particularly the kitchen and the serving lines, which is part of what keeps it from flowing. And that is a significant project, but one that will be funded perhaps 100%. By state and federal dollars that we are allowed to accumulate through our food services program. Those monies can be only used for very narrow approved projects, and addressing the issues at TECAF is one of them. The state has known that for years, Christian Merca, who's a very good planner and proactive thinker, has been accumulating funds in our food services account so that this kind of work could get done.
Councilor King?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. Well done, as always. So a couple of questions, and Councilor Evans stole a little bit of my thunder. I just want to focus on two of the quotes that were brought up tonight: needs, not desires, and help all the community. So help me understand why the basketball court was not part of the plan. I know my son and I, we live on Ellington, we've played on it. I've seen multiple students play on it. So why wasn't it part of the plan?
It wasn't part of the plan based on feedback from high school administration in terms of figuring out how could we set that up differently than it currently is, and how would it fit in with all of this. I wouldn't want to put John Caldwell on the spot for an estimate of something like that. But
we can do that. We can put John. He likes to estimate and talk.
But we can certainly find out, you know, at an estimate what that would cost, and whether that be something that perhaps the board could achieve at its operational budget, or whether that's a significant expense that would come through capital. Or I do also want to add, you know, I mentioned that we value engineered many things out of this. If we do come in under budget, that may be something that we add in through the approved funds. But as for its location, that's what we're still grappling with, about where we would put it and where would be the best place to put it.
Okay, thank you for that. Because again, help all the community, that's part of the community. And I can appreciate it even, well, let me take a step back. So I appreciate the comments that were made by the students in regards to going away and having more of a crowd somewhere else. As an athlete myself, soccer, track, basketball, I can appreciate the vibe that happens when you have your home team there, especially as an Eagles fan that is missing the game right now. I can definitely appreciate it. That said, one thing that we have not discussed, and I can only say it again as a resident on Ellington Road, PV, beautiful school, PV University, we call it, awesome. We don't have enough parking. I did not hear anything about, now we get all the students, congratulations. We're winning, congratulations. We got our conference game, we're about to go to the championship, and nobody can park on the campus. I missed that somewhere. I got the roads, but I didn't see any additional parking.
So the drawings are hard to see, but I can assure you, having been through planning and zoning in many projects, they will be paying very close attention to parking. This plan, I believe, adds 45 spaces over what we have now. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you. So currently on site, there are 540 to 550 parking spaces. We're going to be adding right around 45 to 50. We're going to be adding some additional restriping of the Wapping area. So to get the nitty gritty of it, in dealing with the PD, school staff, there's a need to improve the pickup and drop-off operations. So part of doing the pickup drop-off operations is moving it so on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there, we'd be removing a row of parking, restriping a row of parking to make it so that we can access the new driveway to improve those pickup drop-off operations. We're offsetting those losses with the restriping basically along Ayers and then the addition of the 50 or so spaces at the new site. So the total on-site parking, excluding anything at the community center or down at the corner of Ayers and Nevers, there'll be 600 parking spaces on site.
And you believe for a championship game, where's the coach at from Michigan or wherever? You believe that that 600 spots is going to be enough for a championship team? No, I'm just asking, based off of the comments that the students made today, I don't want to miss it as we're coming into all this money. I just want to make sure. I just want to ask, because before we build this, because that's unfortunately been our MO. We build, and unfortunately we don't guesstimate for enough. And then we got to go back to the lab, as my fellow counselor said, and I just want to make sure that, did we think about that? Because I anticipate that we are going to blow up.
Yeah, I mean, planning and zoning is very thorough, and there are questions about parking spaces. I know that from the other projects. So they're going to look at traffic studies and look at impact. I'm not saying that if there was a championship game, that there wouldn't be difficulties with parking.
Right.
But I would hate to not put in a lighted field because one night it might be not ideal. I also would add, just as an aside, to Pleasant Valley, because some people aren't aware, the site work isn't completed at Pleasant Valley, and so there is an area that's designed for additional parking, but that's not available to us yet. So when the site work is completed, there will be additional parking that was required by P&Z. It's just that it couldn't be done this season, so it will take another season to work on that.
That is awesome to know. Okay.
I just wanted to add one thing about the championship level game. So the bleachers that we're proposing are the same number of seats that are at the existing field. So the site currently and the operations that are currently in place to meet that capacity of seats will be matched at the new field. But we wouldn't be in a situation where we'd be having two kind of championship level, high level games, but same number of seats that are currently there. So should be able to deal with the number of parking in the same sort of way that you deal with, say, like a Thanksgiving Day game now.
Okay. Thank you for that. The last question that I'll ask on this, and thank you, fellow counselors, for the time, is, so one of the things that has come up in the past again, and obviously I was not here at the time that the lights have been presented prior to, as you so eloquently put it. For a while, there's been a question about a pool. Was that not something that was, because I know we have a lot of swimmers that go to other towns as well.
Right, so a pool was not in the strategic plan, so I was not tasked with that. And I also believe that'll be a town initiative Mr. Maniscalco, because that would unlikely occur on Board of Ed property. So it really would be a town asset that the town would bring forward at a time that they feel that's right.
So that would be on John Caldwell with Parks and Rec.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Just want to be clear on that. He likes to come to the mic, so, okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, no, it's on tape, so if he left, that's okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Deputy Mayor?
Go ahead.
So, thank you very much. Great presentation, and thank you to the students and to everybody who spoke. Totally agree that we need a lighted field. I thought that way when my daughter was at school, 2003 to 2007, and understood about the neighbors. My only concern is that I think anything like this that we do, we need to do in a way that is transparent to all of our residents. You know, I would expect that students, and especially student athletes and all athletes, will be supportive of this. It's a great idea. But there is a cost, and I just think that we need to make sure that all of our residents are aware of it, and then we just open it up so that they become aware of what it's going to cost. And also, and you know, Councilor Bozinski already asked this question, were there other capital improvements coming down? Because the other thing we don't want to do to our residents is surprise them, right? When it comes to next June and we start telling people what their taxes are, we don't want any surprises. So because of that, I'm concerned about how, you know, I saw all the places you're going to speak, but how do we get this to all of our residents in such a short span of time? Because it's my understanding that there's something called a quiet period.
Sure, so I can speak to both those things. You know, I would say, having been in this role for 14 years and lived in town much longer than that, I will say that I would argue that we actually, just as is, have gone above and beyond most referenda projects in terms of outreach. Whether it's $35 million road project, which needed, happy to support, that's not a criticism, but that did not involve multiple televised meeting, going to all these community groups, meeting at the community center. That type of outreach is actually atypical from my experience in town. And I think part of the reason why there may be some thought about the community outreach is that because it's a Board of Ed project, it's being associated with the outreach we did with the 10-year plan. But I would say that the 10-year plan, you know, was a $162 million four-school plan involving over 300,000 square feet of new construction over a 10-year period. So in comparison, this project is only, I say only, 7.5 million, will be completed in less than a year and does not involve construction buildings. So I've seen many a referenda move forward with far less information than what we've already done, but we always like to go above and beyond, and that's why we've made these brochures. That's why I've offered to go to any community groups. I'm confident that we can continue to get the word out. We certainly have multiple televised meetings at this point. Everything is on our website. And I would, to answer your question about the silent period, so the silent period kicks off when a town council votes to put something in a referendum. What that means is that taxpayer resources, whether school or town, cannot be used to promote the project. So I would not be going around and promoting it, because this is promotional, it's meant to be promotional. At that point, I step back, and those that are employees step back, and we take things off our website, and we do lots of things to make sure that the rules are that you cannot be promoting. It does not mean you can't answer factual questions. It doesn't mean that if somebody had a question that we wouldn't be able to answer it. It just means that we should not be promoting it with district resources. Now, the community can certainly do what it likes. They're doing that in their own time, and I have no doubt that our students, families, and community groups who are interested in this, including many of the pickleballers I've spoken to, will carry on the community conversations beyond the silent period.
So my other question is, do we have an idea of the expected operating costs of the complex, mainly the tennis courts, pickleball, and fields?
I can let John Caldwell answer that, but I did ask him that question, and he believes it's minimal cost. As you heard him say, it actually takes some relief off because the field can be used more readily. But I can certainly turn over to John Caldwell if he wants to give you an estimate on maintenance costs.
So before we do that, so would all of the operating costs fall under the Parks and Rec budget as opposed to the Board of Ed budget?
So the way that works is it does fall under the town's budget, but we do get quote-unquote billed back as the Board of Ed. So when you look at our per pupil expenditure, if there's any work being done on the town side that is in kind, that gets charged back to us. So it sits on the town side, but it is calculated by the state as what we spend in our programs. And in the end, whether it sits on the town or whether it sits on the board, there's no difference to the taxpayer. It's just who's in charge of managing those funds. And so Parks and Rec is under the town. So when they mow our fields and they do things on our behalf, they calculate that and then they bill us back. We're not sending them a check, but they're billing us back so it gets recorded as a board expense with the state.
Okay. So then, John, did you get, do you have a sense of the operating costs? I know you said that mowing and stuff is less, but what about the lighting?
As Dr. Carter alluded to, we do send them a bill every year. We have care, it's care and maintenance. We have the maintenance end of it, and then there's care. The post-tension concrete's not going to require any work really at all for at least the first 10 years because it's under a solid warranty, cracks or defects in workmanship. The synthetic field, our current field right now is, I think it's 8 years old or 9. We've had some issues with that when it was first built. It was built by a company that I don't think they're in business anymore, but we had some problems with seams and things like that. But other than that, the field itself has held up very well. The carpet's still in fairly good shape. We do use a polymeric sand in there, and we have a shock pad underneath. Field Turf is probably if not the best builder in my eyes in the world. They build a phenomenal product. I'm sure that we're not going to have any problems with that. And if we do, they're going to stand behind their product. As far as, like I said, the tennis court's the same thing. They're going to look at what we've built. We've talked to Dr. Carter. We've sat down with Mr. Crowley. Some of the things that we found that work very well around our courts and things that we've done to help prevent maintenance will go into these products, into these 3 things. And as far as like the roadway and things like that, that'll be the Board of Ed's responsibility with plowing and clearing that. But other than that, I don't think it's going to be a big impact to us versus grass. And I think, like I said, it'll take an awful lot of heat off of some of the fields that I do close once in a while. And by the way, the Eagles are winning 7-0. Go Birds.
What's the score?
Thank you, sir. It should be 7-0.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. I just want to thank the folks that came and spoke. That 8-year-old boy, I think his last name was Petgrave with the suit on. Very impressed by him. Very well-spoken kid. Could barely see him, but that was impressive. I don't know if his mom and dad are here. Can you reach out to me another day? Thank you. One question I wanted to ask was, are there lights going on the tennis courts and the pickleball courts? Because I know this is a whole community project here. I know myself and one of my buddies, kids go to bed. We've met at the courts before and just kind of hung out and played. Is that going to happen? I didn't see that anywhere.
So as I mentioned, we worked really hard to bring in a number that we thought would get support. We did not want to exceed the 7.55. Currently, lights are not accounted for. However, the poles and the foundations and everything is there. We we also have had some new conversations that we may be able to take advantage of the lights that are on the, even though the courts are very old, those lights are not very old, and we're investigating whether those could be incorporated into the plans that are already there. So it'll be set up for lights, and it's possible, just like any other project, as I've mentioned, if there's things coming in under budget, we can bring things forward, but it was difficult to make decisions about bringing a number that we thought could be supported, and that's why, because technically the school doesn't require night lights for its programs, we felt that might have to come at a second phase.
Okay, great. That was going to be my next question. Could we use the existing lights? So it's good to know that you've looked into that. I do want to give you credit. I know, and the members of the Board of Ed that I've spoken with, I did say that it would be very important, and my recommendation, to have the tax impact on your pamphlet, because I know the first one that I saw didn't have that on there, so I appreciate you taking those recommendations and making that happen. That's good to see, and that's something that everybody should be able to know. I wanna request from Field Turf, just would love to see a list of references and past projects. I know you're in charge of New England. Probably those would be make the most sense just because of the climate and everything like that. But as we all know, the splash pad, we had an issue with the contractor. So I'm sure you do great work, but it would just be good to give everybody a chance to reach out to some of your contacts. Guess we got another.
Answer that question quickly, and then we'll be happy to come up with a list with some contact names and information. My name's Andrew Dijak. I'm the Regional Vice President for Field Turf. So we've done every Division I and Division II fields in the state of Connecticut. We're working on doing every Division III. We don't have those yet. Last year we did about 20 fields in Connecticut, and through the program that were sponsored through the state, we've done about $60 million worth. We're happy to give you references, names, or we could just give you a list, and you could reach out. You could pick anybody off of our list and get their recommendations on us without a problem.
That's great. So I'm assuming you're on the state contract then?
We are.
That's awesome. I was going to ask about the Little League field, but Erica asked about that. That's basically all that I have. I just want to, again, thank you for coming and giving that presentation. Everyone else who came up and spoke, you did a great job. And I have an athletic background here in town. I can speak on to some of the students that have said they've gone to other schools and felt an atmosphere. Well, I played hockey here, and when I played on the team, we turned the program around, and the whole town rallied behind us. Friday night, I don't even remember what nights we played hockey, but Friday, Saturday night, all of our friends wanted to be there instead of somewhere else that might not be safe. And we actually had parents coming that didn't even have kids or kids in the school. I'm sure a lot of you folks remember that period in town. Campions, when they were here, they were given free or unlimited pizza and wings every time we won, and I think we went 25-0 that season in the regular season. So I do feel what you guys are saying. We actually were busing, I think sometimes we had 4 buses of students going to our away games and taking the away arenas over. So a good athletic program really can take over the whole community, and I would love to take my little girls to a Friday night game and know that they're safe there with their friends. So I appreciate all you young students, the high school kids especially, for saying that, because I really do feel what you're saying, because it's more than just for those kids. It's for their future. You have a good coach, you stay in contact with that person for the rest of your life. And by the way, if you don't have the right grades, you can't play. So it does give you an incentive to do well in school and not mess around or get in trouble, because there are consequences. So again, thank you for everyone who came out, especially those students. If you ever want to reach out to me, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pendleton?
Thank you.
I'm gonna start, I have a billion questions here, and I'm gonna start with the pamphlet first off, and all the PowerPoints that you presented. One of them is, that I'm looking at, and I've listened to everyone's questions, I'm not gonna repeat them. On page 3, public high schools in the CCC with lighted fields, how many of those are double L? Principal? You look at that and get back to me, no problem. Moving on to page 5, with the projected enrollment of 460 students, how many of those will be at the high school, please?
So that's just high school enrollment. So
Oh,
the-
I'm
so
sorry, it's right
all-
there. Thank you so much. I didn't see that. Thank you. Okay. And then looking on page 5, at the traffic study at the bottom, is that a building that was proposed? When you mentioned lockers, that makes me think, is that a building over there between the annex and the field that was possibly in there and not going to be in there? Or is there? It's bleachers and press box. Is that a building that, it's so minuscule, it's hard to see. But behind the bleachers, is that any type of building? Because you mentioned lockers. So were you intending to have some type of a building with lockers in them, or have lockers within the annex?
We would have to use the annex at this point because we took, to keep costs down, we took out the lockers. They would have been, and we're hoping maybe in the future, they would be located across the field, not near the parking lot, but on the other side where there's a grass area. But there's not a building. That's, I think that what you're
Okay.
seeing is the press box.
Okay, so what you're saying you mentioned phase 2. Is this possibly in phase 2 where lockers would be between the field and the tree line?
Yes, yes. If you're looking at the picture on the front of the brochure, it would be to the right in that grassy area.
Okay. Okay, and let's go to that picture then, because I have an arrow pointed up there. This, I understand, and I'm just trying to get the visual. The annex, the building of the annex, looking at the larger picture of what you gave us, this gray road here that leads to the field, what is that? Is that a walking, what is that, please, from Ayers Road?
So,
You see it right here?
yes,
This
I see
one?
it. Yep, it's an emergency access vehicle
Okay.
path, and so that's, would be gated. It wouldn't always be open, but it's for emergency access. And I also believe maybe, is there any ADA accessible parking spaces associated with that?
Yeah, so in an effort to provide ADA accessibility to the visiting side bleachers, we would be able to put a couple of parking spaces there based on the number of seats that are going to be proposed for a future set of bleachers, around 300 seats. We would have ADA accessible parking spaces there. We still
Along
have
the tree line on Ayers?
this.
The first square down at the bottom, the rectangle at the bottom, or the
Yep,
ADA parking would be up on the right?
So the lighter gray line coming from
Yeah.
the bottom of the screen, those, I think it's 4 or 5 parking spaces. Those are the dark gray ones there.
Oh, I see them now, okay.
Yeah, so those would be the accessible parking spaces for the visiting side bleachers.
Got
Home
it.
side, is all between the proposed bleachers and the existing building.
There would be ADA up there towards the annex?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Do we have the double L answer? I don't want to get too far, thank you. I don't want to get too far into here.
We think, Counselor, we think it's around 5. I don't know, without knowing the exact numbers here, and I see it compared in the other graph, but it's going to be 5 or 6 of these schools are double L schools for the
Thank you.
CCC.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on. Give me a second. Okay. I know that Counselor Carey had mentioned being transparent with our community, and that's on my back too, on the back notes, is inviting the public to contact us council members that are non-sports folks I would like the public, anyone in the public, to contact any one of us here on the council before we move on with a vote with this, or to come and speak with us at a council meeting with their views. I appreciate all the sports folks and the parents that support them, that come out and speak, but I'd also like to hear from all the residents within the community, as many as possible, with transparency. So that's, check that off. Okay, next. Hang on, I'm getting there. Okay, going to page 7, we have an option here. The page 7 is the black and white from 1966. Is there a reason you chose that instead of the 2016 color photo, which would bring us more up to speed of where we're at today?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody had a bit of history of the site overall. I think everybody had a little bit more familiarity of what's going on currently, whether it be the students that are coming by or the people that would be going right down the street. But I don't think everybody quite had a realization that the spot we're proposing for the tennis courts was a parking lot before, that the tennis courts were actually getting built in 1966. It's kind of hard to take somebody's word sometimes when they're just like, oh, they're 50 years old, but wanted to try to make an effort to prove that to the council.
I got you, but we can look at this 2016 photo on our GIS, Mr. Maniscalco, for anyone out there in the public that would like to see an overview and a color view would be the 2016 aerial photo.
Correct.
Yes, thank you. Bear with me. Okay. And looking at this is very small here, so bear with me on that. With the, looking on page 8, the plan overview for the turf field, I see the visitors ADA parking over there with the access road. That rectangle to the right there on Ayers, that's the berm you're speaking of? Or trees and berm that you're speaking of?
Yes.
Okay. And then the parking lot that is south of that, that is the existing annex parking lot now?
Yep, that's the current location, and one of the things that we'll be doing is taking out the large island that's there and redoing some of the striping to make it more efficient. One of the other kind of improvements that's between the driveway and that parking lot would be a raised island so that we don't have as much intermingling of people coming to get into the pickup drop-off line and people looking to access to the school or that particular parking lot. They could do that through the secondary access a little bit further to the south, but trying to do as much as we can to, again, keep costs down, make the existing site function much more efficiently.
Okay. Bear with me. Thank you. And moving on, Mr. Caldwell had mentioned, or the soccer fields lack the necessary drainage, page 11, lack the necessary drainage to keep the surface playable after inclement weather, making it unusable for practice or games for extended amount of time. Has that been remediated, Mr. Caldwell, for the soccer fields? Raise your hand, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We still have drainage issues, though. Don't think they're all remediated and gone. When we get heavy rains, the fields don't, there's grass, it's your lawn. They don't drain. Like this morning, we couldn't play a game on a field this morning, no.
Gotcha. Okay. Moving on to, with page 11, under good neighbor here, it says mindfulness of our neighbors and reasonability in the scope and the use. All the neighbors in that area have been notified of this, yes?
No, they'll get it in a butters letter through the planning and zoning process. So soon we'll be submitting to planning and zoning, unless we were to leave here tonight feeling maybe we should move forward. But planning and zoning then gives us, well, really gives Field Turf all of the abutters in the GIS, and then those letters come from that process, and there's a public hearing through that process for the neighbors.
At the planning and zoning meeting? Or here?
No, at planning and zoning.
At planning and zoning, okay. Go ahead,
Just
sir.
a point of clarification on that. As part of the overall project, we do have to get wetlands and planning and zoning applications. So all of the abutting neighbors and people across the street will be notified through a certificate of mailing. So it's not like we're sticking something in the mailbox. They get notified, they have to sign for it twice.
Okay.
So one from each of the applications.
Okay. So I think my question is that there is this plan here that could affect their quality of life. and they have not been personally invited by the Board of Ed to attend their meeting for the presentation, nor to this meeting, so they could get a head start on the presentations and not hear it once it's in planning and zoning. For the fear and the fact of what we went through before, when the lights were talked about at the other field with the other neighbors and the possibility of being sued. So to encase them early on and not wait for planning and zoning to say, hey, now you have to contact the abutters, but to be friendly neighbors and to contact them early on and say, you know, we're opening our doors, please come and listen to the presentation, I think would have been better to do. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is after they get the notification, then they come here and they're very angry and upset. So to avoid that, but to encompass them early in the game might be a good thing.
Councilor Pendleton, I can just respond to that. There were two particular neighbors that were concerned that we had had communication with in the past about the other field and their discontent. And before our first plan went out to the Board of Ed, I personally emailed them only because it's someone that I have been in contact with. Other than that, in order to be fair and make sure we're not leaving anybody out, I really do think there is value in following the abutters letter process. It's very formal. It doesn't pick and choose. You don't miss anybody. It's very thorough. And we are prepared to, we submitted today to wetlands, which means we would have 7 days to notify abutters. So the abutters will be notified of a project very soon. But the informal communication is, I worry that there's a process that I think is good for the town to follow in terms of making sure that neighbors are known. And certainly, just informally, I've happened to have talked to two abutters who are in favor, but that doesn't mean there aren't abutters that are not.
Thank you for that. Okay, now I'm on to my back page, where all the questions are. Sorry, those are just a few going through the program here. Okay. The police department, has the police department given a traffic study on the new driveway and the new road coming off of Ayers? Because they're not here this evening to give us a report. We do have a report from the Parks Department, but I'd like to hear from the police department on what their recommendations are.
Yep, so these plans were developed in conjunction with the police department, both with school staff from their existing knowledge base, the review of the traffic study from 2020, and we had 3 working meetings with the PD before we came up with this layout and the overall development of how the site improvements were going to function as far as pickup and drop off. So they've been an integral part to the development of this driveway plan.
Okay, so all their recommendations were taken into consideration?
Yes.
And we know, could you ask the chief that, Mr. Maniscalco, please? Since the police department is the traffic authority. Also, the rec department, I haven't seen the rec department here. We have the parks department here. The rec department, Ms. Molly Keys isn't here this evening to speak on this. In working with the rec department on the operating costs, the increase in the lighting, the cost on that, and where it's going to fall on the rec department side. So I was wondering if we can get the Ms. Molly Keys here from the rec department to give us any input that she may have on this and covering any of the rec department needs. And Public Works, speaking of which is, brings me to the point of the snow removal and road repairs. Would the driveway and the parking lot and everything and all the surface coverage be covered by the town in the future for any repairs?
Yes, the plowing is done through our own BOE contractor for on-site plowing on our school properties. But of course, if there were roadway repairs or things that need to be done, that's always done in conjunction with the board and the town.
Okay. So the maintenance and upkeep will increase in the operating costs, and that's considered part of the operating costs, as any of the road repairs or anything like that. So that's something to consider that we're going to have to take into consideration. Mr. Caldwell mentioned that it has a 10-year coverage on the warranty for me, if I'm going to use that right word correctly. And then it has another 10-year of coverage, so it's 20 years. So at that point of the 20-year, that's when we'd be going out for our bonding as a 20-year bonding. So we would pay it off, and then the warranty runs out, and then what happens at that point?
So as far as the warranty goes, the first 10 years and then making sure that you're doing the things that go with the manufacturer's recommendations to get to the 20 years. At the end of it, it's not like the courts are unusable. One of the major differences of that is that being a post-tension slab of concrete, there's tension rods in it that basically hold all the concrete together. Very different how the existing paved surfaces are for the existing tennis courts, where you get those gaps that continue to expand. So at the end of that lifespan, they're still going to be very usable. They may need to be repainted again, so the lines, but it's not like they're going to fall into disrepair how the existing paved courts are. As far as the turf goes, our turf warranty is 8 years. Sometimes if we know that the facility is good at and knowledgeable about keeping up with their facilities, we might be able to extend it to 10 years. But again, at the end of the 10 years, if you're making the appropriate maintenance, it's not like your field is no longer good at the end of 10 years. A field like this, especially having 2 fields on site, 15 years is not an unrealistic amount of time before you would need to start making improvements to it. So just because those are what the warranty timelines are, does not mean that they fall into disrepair after those warranties are over.
I'm glad you brought up the turf field with the warranty on the turf field. Is there any updated health updates on the turf field and players' health? And I know that this was a big conversation 8-9 years ago when we first talked about the turf field, and also any of the water runoff that comes off that turf field, because there are 2 brooks over there, or a brook over there. Do you have any updated health information on that and on the water runoff?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it comes up on pretty much every one of these that we do. Usually what we tell people is we can direct them right to the Connecticut Department of Public Health's website. They have right on there that there's no, basically paraphrasing, but no increased health risk from the playing on synthetic turf fields. One thing that they do note is that you want to make sure you have proper ventilation. So if you're playing in an indoor facility that was unventilated, you can get issues from that. However, being outside, we're good on that.
And what about those little pellets that are in there and folks inhaling those?
Yep, that was taken into account, and they said there's basically nothing with that. We have, I think it's hundreds of peer-reviewed analytical studies that basically also say the same thing, that there's no increased health risks. One that comes up with people sometimes is PFAS and PFOS. That's a bit of a newer one, the forever chemical. We don't use those chemicals in our manufacturing process. And then as far as stormwater runoff, the way that the turf field operates, which is different than how the current grass is set up with those tennis courts. Right now, everything sheet flows over the grass, sheet flows off the tennis courts, gets into the existing storm drainage system, so it's picking up all the particulates of the grass, people's chewing gum, whatever might be on the tennis courts, any mildew, things like that. What happens with the turf field is the water actually goes down through the turf. The backing is such that the sand, the rubber, all the turf materials, they don't go down through the backing, but the water does. It drains around 40 to 50 inches an hour. Below that is a stone base. It's about 8 inches of stone, which actually helps filter any rainwater, so it actually comes out almost cleaner on the back end. And one of the really nice things about this particular site that we chose to do this is the test pits that we did. We went down about 10 feet and found that all the material is very sandy, very similar to, right down the street on, I think it's Sand Hill Road. That has a name for a reason. Or it might be Sandbank, I forget. But all the soils are very suitable for promoting infiltration, so we'll have very little impact to the surrounding stormwater system. Also, the stormwater system is sized to mitigate any increases in the 100-year storm event.
Thank you. I know that was an issue with the first turf field. Got the health date? Give me 1 second just to check this off. I'm buttoning it up, boy. Hang on, give me 1 second, okay? Okay, so we got the snow removals in the building. Okay, Mr. Maniscalco, here on the end with the tax chart, if lighting is, first of all, if lighting is put on, let me get back to that for a second. If lighting is put on to the tennis court and the pickleball courts, how is the lighting plus the lighting for the turf field, how is that going to be paid for? Is that through the solar? Is that where we're doing the net zero? How is that going to be paid for?
So the lighting on the turf field is already encapsulated into the 7.55. The lighting on the tennis courts would be a minimal cost, but one that we took out just because we were trying to be proactive. So that would likely not be bonded. That would likely be something that we would find in the operating budget or maybe capital projects, but I think you're looking at a relatively small cost. I'm seeing a head nod on that. Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Maniscalco, going on to the tax impact chart, the 3 years, you have the total cost of $85.75. Is that for the year of, is that all 3 years added together for the $350,000 house?
Correct.
Okay, so after that 2028 year and for the next 17 years, is it going to stay at $85.75 each and every year after that?
It would stay at your, what was your, well, it would stay at the, whatever, how do I explain it? So your costs basically, they phase in incrementally, right? So your first year is $4.90, then another $36, and then your $44.10.
Yep.
And then you just stay the same because you're not looking at any additional budgetary increases, but that all of those costs together, that total of $85.75 is.
So we would stay at the
built in.
$44.10 for the next 17 years?
No, you're actually, I guess, would be at the $85.75.
For the next 17 years?
Correct.
That's what I was asking. Yep, yep. So to the a house that's valued, market value $350,000, they would be paying $85.75 a year for the next 17 years after the first 3 years. Correct. That's what you're saying? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being patient.
Sorry, I have one question. If it's something Dr. Carter can do, it's piggybacking on Councilor Pendleton's and the notification of abutters and neighbors on Ayers Road. I know the neighbors on Ayers Road will probably be happy with the new entranceway, but do they know the exact, like, I'm not sure the radius that you would use to notify abutters, like would Graham Road be affected with notification, the Nevers Road people, do they know what could be affected with traffic for a game or a practice?
So we would be following the town's practice with which abutters get notified. It's a pretty extensive group, and even when say the impact of, say, the tennis courts, it's still all the abutters that are going to get notified for the wetlands piece. So regardless of how far away you may be as an abutter, if you are defined as an abutter by the town, then they will be notified. The town's process, they give a form letter and a recommendation of how you just alert neighbors to a project. It is upon the neighbor to do his or her research to, if they want to come to a hearing, that's on them, but we're following the town's process.
Is there anything that you can do ahead of the P&Z and wetlands notifications? If you can get a step ahead, saying that we as a board is asking the town council to do this, to give them a heads up that potentially a P&Z meeting and wetlands meeting can come up.
Well, I believe all of the abutters are going to get a letter within the next 7 days because that's required by wetlands, and that's our first application that would go in. It's been submitted and just waiting a SIG, and then we're required within 7 days to alert the abutters of this activity. And we follow the town's template and all of that.
Okay, so things have been put in motion with P&Z and wetlands. Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none.
I just have one. So do you have a date where this topic is going to be on the planning and zoning calendar or not yet?
No, so the submission, you need to go to wetlands first, and so that is the first submission that we've made today. And then they set the schedule in terms of, they may give feedback, there may be some items missing, they may say we need this study or that study, and then they set the terms of when the hearings are. We would not control that, that would be controlled by wetlands, same with P&Z. When there's a submission, they would determine when on the calendar we would appear.
Okay, and so P&Z will need a public hearing, and so they have to put in a notice in the newspaper 2 weeks prior to that hearing?
P&Z is going to follow all the processes that
Right,
P&Z
okay.
always follows.
So it could be a while.
Currently, what we're projecting and hopeful of is that there'll be probably one wetlands meeting, the one wetlands hearing. We're doing all of the work that we're currently proposing is in already disturbed and developed areas, and we have no direct wetland impacts. So with that in mind, wetlands will be about a 1-month process, what we're hopeful for. P&Z will not make a decision until wetlands has already made a decision. So we're hopeful that wetlands will be basically cleared up in January, and then we'll move through the planning and zoning process in February and March. So over the next 3 months or so, they'll be getting several notifications about the meetings. Planning and zoning and wetlands both meet twice a month.
Okay, so then the reason you see me hesitating is, so you're going to ask town council to vote on the referendum before we know whether planning and zoning is going to approve?
Yes, and that would be a typical process. Just to give a comparison, I've been thinking about the 10-year plan tonight, and we had none of this before. We're doing way more front-load work because of the timeline, because we're trying to get this project done as a summer project. With the 10-year plan, that was sent to referendum, and then those approvals began. We're front-loading and being proactive, but it's not typical to have all this. We didn't even have drawings like this for the elementary schools before the community voted. So we've just done probably more front-loading and more proactive than you would see in a typical project because of our constraints with the timeline.
Thank you.
Any other? Councilor Baganski?
Can I go back to the tax impact chart for a minute here, Mr. Maniscalco? There were certain questions asked and it just piqued my interest. So I'm looking at this and I'm confused. So the numbers for 26, 27, 28, those are annual numbers or monthly?
Those are for the year, so those are annual
that's my
numbers.
increased cost. Yeah. Okay, so my total cost for the 3 years is $86. Then my average monthly cost is $238, but.
Correct.
All right, so can we just confirm what that extrapolated number is going to be for years 4 through 20? Because if my average monthly cost is $238, it doesn't add up to $85. I just want to have a solid number to
Well,
present.
yeah, so the 238 is divided by 36 months
Correct.
total.
Correct. All right, but I'm just trying to get my head around knowing exactly what years 4 through 20 are going to be.
Yeah, well, those are, so I mean, the way you need to look at it is, by that point, we've already issued the debt, right?
Yep.
So we know what that debt payment is gonna be, and you've now taken on that total amount of what that debt is. So whatever, I mean, we've got a number of hypotheticals built into this, right? Because we don't know what our mill rate is and some of those other things. We don't know what the interest rate's gonna be at the time. But basically, what that debt payment is what that debt payment's going to be at that point in the year 2029. Because we've now ramped all those payments in, so 2029, once you hit that point, that's what your debt payment is gonna be.
Okay.
Moving forward, so. Now, of course, there could be other debt payments that come on as associated with that and other things, so that'll change what the total dollar amount the taxpayer sees, but in this isolated view of this project, that's what that payment would be.
Okay,
Does that help?
all right, thank you.
Councilor Carey?
I agree with Councilor Bazinski, but let's check out these numbers a little bit, because the monthly cost I think ongoing is higher than this monthly cost that's shown here. I just want to be, I know it's little dollars, but I think we just need to be very transparent with our taxpayers. We don't have to do it here, but I would like somebody to double back on it, make sure we have good numbers for the 20 years. We can make the assumption, just like I think it was made in the document that you sent us, that this chart was based on, that we're going to assume current interest rates, we're going to assume this, we're going to assume that. We can just document the assumptions and then get the numbers solid.
Sure, I can ask Patty Perry to take a second look at it.
Any other? Counselor Pendleton?
Yes. Do we need an 824? Is it 824 or 826, Mr. Maniscalco, for this?
It would be an 820, well, you're referring to an 824. I don't know, that would really be up to the Director of Planning and probably even the Chair of Planning and Zoning, whether they would want to do an 824, because it would depend on if it's considered a change of use. Since the majority of the location's already used as a sports field, I don't know how that would change.
Could we get an 824 just to make sure that we're covered with getting an 824?
Well, they would probably do that in association with their application. So,
Okay, okay. And yes, doing the math with the 238 a month times 12 doesn't come out to the 8575 a year. And then
It's 2856.
it would be 2856 instead of 8575.
It's divided by 36, the full 36 months.
But going forward for the next 17 years, what would it be?
Going forward for the next 17 years,
Is 8575, that's what would need to be divided by 12 for monthly impact?
it would be divided by 36 because the 8575 is over a 3-year period. So it's 12 months in each of those years.
Right.
Times 3, that's 36.
But after the 3 years, you just said we bonded everything and all funded all the money and brought all the money and bonded all the money. So that's what I asked for the next 17 years after these 3 years, because we're going for a 20-year bond. For the next 17 years, what would be the cost per year per $350,000 house?
In 2029, your
Yes.
cost would be $85.75 for the year.
For the year,
For the year.
okay?
And
And then 2030, the same thing, would be $85.75 for the year. So that's why I'm saying divided by 12.
Correct.
That would give us the monthly then.
Yeah, then you would
which
divide
is
that by 12. to give you-
$7.14.
Yeah, I think that the confusing part is that average monthly cost is for that 3-year period, not for those months out past there, if that gives you, if that explains it. I think,
Okay.
yeah, so the finance director was trying to show you what that average monthly cost would be in that 3-year period,
Yeah.
not what years 4 through 20 would be.
But that's what I want to clarify. Those years past it, those next 17 years, it's going to be $85.75
Correct,
each year.
each year.
Okay. And that doesn't change with mill rate or anything like that. That's the bonding.
The only thing
Unless
that
you
would
go
change
and
would be interest.
the interest
which we
bond
don't
changes, you could do something like that, where you save us some money, like you
Well,
always
if
do.
it were refinanced,
Right.
or, it depends on the whole bidding process of what we ended up bidding out the bonds for, but that would, for the most part, it's gonna be what that number is.
So the total cost over 20 years, the first 3 years is that, but then the 17 years after that is 85.75 times 17, and then you can add those 3 years in there. Okay. All right, thank you.
Seeing no other questions for Dr. Carter, I would like to thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, moving on. Item 8, Counselor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. I move that we approve the December 4th, 2023 Town Council meeting minutes. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves the minutes of the regular Town Council meeting of December 4th, 2023.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, or discussion? Any items change? No changes? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries.
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, roll call.
Mike, do you want me to read it? I'll do the roll call for you, and then we'll give it to you. So I'll just start. Counselor Begansky? Counselor Lewis?
Abstain.
Counselor Balboni? Counselor Carey?
Aye.
Mayor Delnicki?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Siracusa?
Yes.
Counselor King?
Yes.
Counselor Evans?
Yes.
Counselor Pendleton? Yes. That's 8 yes, 1 abstention, no
Okay,
negatives.
motion carries with the 8 yeses.
Correct.
Okay, moving on to item 9, communications from liaisons, officers, and boards directly responsible to the council. Counselor Carey?
So Planning and Zoning had a meeting this week. They did approve the Metro Realty site plan. And that's all I have.
Counselor King?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just real briefly, the Social Justice and Racial Equity Commission met last Monday. Very good meeting. I just wanted to send a shout out to 2 departments, the Town Manager Liaison, Vanessa Perry, as well as the Police Department Liaison, Chief Lindstrom. So if the community hasn't noticed, we've been putting this up all around the town. The cops have also been putting this in their office, and basically this is a town of South Windsor, tell us how we're doing. It's a QR code. You scan the QR code to complete a satisfaction survey, and then what ends up happening is something is printed out letting us know whether our customer service has met your expectations, what date did you visit, so on and so forth. I say that to say that the Social Justice and Racial Equity Commission just wanted to make sure that we were taking care of all of our residents in the best manner possible, whether it be for the town side or the police department side. So I just wanted to shout that out, that that's out there. So please, if there is something that pops up, scan the code, fill it out, and that way that report will get to the appropriate people. Secondly, Madam Mayor, on February 20th is Social Justice Day internationally. And so they are putting some things together in the works for a Social Justice Day. It's going to be on February 20th. The Chief of Police is working alongside the chair, Ms. Reynolds, to make sure, first it was going to be the library, it might be at a hotel, but just keep on the lookout for anything that's going to happen on February 20th. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other reports? Seeing none, moving on to number 10, reports from committees. There is none.
There is.
Is there?
Pension Committee had a meeting. Mr. Maniscalco, could you give a report on that, please?
Counselor Pendleton?
Sure. So we had our pension committee meeting just the other day. We reviewed all of our current accounts that we're invested in. They had, I believe it was 1 that was on watch, if I remember correctly. And they had no other recommendations to the committee at this time.
Thank you.
That being it, thank you. Item 11, the consent agenda. Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Motion to approve 11A1 through 11A17 as amended as a first reading on the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries. Item 11, Councilor Pendleton.
Motion to approve 11A18 through 11A22 as a first reading on the consent agenda.
Second. Have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. On to 11C, miscellaneous. Being none. Item 12, unfinished business. Seeing none. too many pages. Thank you. Item 11, Counselor Lewis.
Motion to approve 11B1 through 11B7 as second reading to the consent agenda.
Second.
Hearing a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Counselor Evans.
Motion to approve 11BA to 11B18 as a second reading on the consent agenda.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to 11C, having none. Item 12, unfinished business, having none. Item 13, new business, 13A, Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Resolution appointing Thespina Bugansky as an alternate on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby appoints Thespina Bugansky as an alternate on the Planning and Zoning Commission to replace the expired term of Atif Qureshi for a term end date of December 1st, 2027. Consideration of this motion is postponed until the Town Council's next regular scheduled meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to ask why this appointment was put over here under new business as opposed to the consent agenda?
It's under my purview to decide where it goes on the agenda, so I put it under new business to separate due to the counselor who needs to abstain, so it just makes it easier than putting it on the consent agenda.
Oh, I didn't know there was going to be extensions. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Bugansky.
Abstain.
Counselor Lewis. Aye. Counselor Balboni. Aye. Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Mayor Delnicki.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Yes.
Counselor King. Yes. Counselor Evans.
Yes.
Counselor Pendleton. Yes. I have 8 yes and 1 abstention from Counselor Bugansky.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Item 13B, Counselor Carey.
Resolution appointing Jackie Balboni as a member of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby appoints Jackie Balboni as a member of Parks and Recreation Commission to replace the unexpired term of Toby Lewis for a term date end of December 31st, 2025. Consideration of this motion is postponed until the Town Council's next regularly scheduled meeting.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Roll call, please.
Counselor Bugansky. Counselor Lewis. Counselor Balboni.
Abstain.
Counselor Carey.
Yes.
Mayor Delnicki.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Yes.
Counselor King. Yes. Counselor Evans.
Yes.
Counselor Pendleton. Yes. 1 abstention from Counselor Balboni and
Thank
8
you.
yeses.
Motion passes. Item 13D, discussion item on the 2024-2025 fiscal year budget policy statement. Which one would like to take that? Counselor Carey, Counselor Balboni?
So for the Town of South Windsor fiscal year 2024 to 2025, one of the changes that we need to make to the 2024-2025 budget goals is the references in A through F are referencing the 2019 strategic plan. So these references should be removed. In looking at the 2023 strategic plan, some of the topics that this is referencing are not written in the same way. So we'll just remove them would probably make it easier. In the objectives for the proposed full year 2024-2025 budget, one of the changes that was made was target remaining flat to the current budget for 24-25. I think this is really important because we know that taxes went up significantly for South Windsor residents last year, and that as we look forward to the 24-25 year, we have to try and tighten things up a little bit so that taxes don't continue to go up. Looking at the forecasted budget, currently taxes will be going up. The mill rate is on that forecast is going to 33 something. So, you know, trying to at least hold the line on our municipal budget might help us reduce that somewhat. So I thought that was a good thing to put in here. And in order to do that, the town manager suggested removing the creative position of a full-time economics development coordinator because, you know, that would allow him to, you know, remain flat. And he felt that that was a workable solution. One option, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in an effort to try to keep taxes flat in this coming year, I think, you know, we need to probably determine where our priorities are, and that probably would not rank high as a priority, seeing as we're currently operating without one at this time. So if the goal is to keep taxes flat, adding additional positions like that would probably be counterintuitive.
Is there anything else to be discussed? Should the audit committee get together one last time to clear up any other issues, if there are any on there?
Councilor Pendleton, is there anything?
I'm sorry, you're calling on me as opposed to the mayor? Thank you.
Well,
Madam Mayor,
well,
it's your
I was
meeting.
asking the question, and I know there's some items on the exhibit.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify a few things. There were three of us that met to discuss this, and that was Councilor Carey, myself, and Councilor Balboni, that looked at the last general statement and looking over the present general statement. And I'm not quite sure I understand what you're referring to as far as the strategic plan, removing it. What was it that you first said?
In the parentheses, if you look at like budget goals A, and it says reference number 5 and number 6 of the strategic plan, that's referencing the 2019 strategic plan. But in July, the previous council approved a new strategic plan, the 2023 strategic plan. So my suggestion, so I did look at that plan to see if there was something in that strategic plan that referenced like fiscal responsibility or that. I couldn't find it. So I was just saying, you know, maybe we take the reference to the 2019 strategic plan out.
Mr. Maniscalco, can you confirm that? You'll have to look that over.
You mean as it references something about taxes or finances?
Right here under A, it says continue to ensure public safety, health, and welfare for all residents of all ages to meet the diverse needs of our community. Is that the one you're referring to, Carolyn?
That's the first one, but each one of them has a reference, and they're all 2019.
Each one of them has a reference to the strategic plan. Could you verify the updated version of that in this?
Just as a point of order, this is committee work. I'm not part of the committee, so I don't need to be a part of this discussion. So that's something that the committee that's been assigned by the mayor needs to discuss with the town manager, not during a town council meeting.
Okay.
That's
Right, and
committee
that's
work.
why I asked if there's something, maybe the committee
that's
should
committee
set
work.
something up.
Okay.
Yep.
And
So
get
the-
together.
Then the committee should
I'm
be.
not part of the committee. I don't need to
Yeah,
be
because
part
of
of that
those
conversation.
references.
Let us reconvene.
Okay,
On our
so
agenda.
I'll set up a
It
new
is,
meeting.
but it's a
And we'll
committee.
meet again.
Sure.
Review. Okay.
Just to be clear, if we have a question, as a council, we can send it to the committee. They can send it to the town manager. But I'm not going to discuss committee work during a town council meeting.
I didn't even know this were going to be changed. It wasn't discussed at our first meeting. Thank you. And also, I just want to clarify, is there going to be a budget working group, or is the three of us only on the creation of the general statement?
We haven't discussed that yet, so we'll probably have something at the next meeting for
Because
you.
we have discussed it, and there's some that think that the budget working group consists of us three, and then we're not sure that, we believe, looking at or referencing the minutes, you can look back at the minutes, because I believe you mentioned that when this was created.
Sure, I'll report back on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I would ask if anybody on town council has any comments for the finance group, that you send them to us. Thanks. And if you want to send them to me and I'll collect them, or send them to the three of us, whatever works for you. That's all. Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. You all set, Councilor Pender? Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, item 13E,
This is on our agenda, so I do feel like it's worth it to discuss it, in my opinion. I think it's important for the committee to hear the conversation and the input, so politely, I slightly disagree. And I think aligning these points back to the strategic plan, we have a new strategic plan, I think that's a great idea. My only other thought is that number 7 was eliminated, which is leverage grand list growth to offset budget increases, which I think is important if we are looking at tax increases. Is there a reason that that was not included?
Yes, because we didn't want to leverage increases in the grand list to offset the budget, because again, if looking at the forecasted budget, it's pushing up the mill rate by from 31 to 33. Looking at the 24-25. So when we were saying that, we were saying, okay, well, the town budget can go up that much? And what I'm saying is, we don't really want to do that, because we want to try and hold the line on the budget increases, so that if we have grand list improvements, they become the benefit of the taxpayer, and we're able to non-increase or hold the line on our mill rate, as opposed to increasing the taxpayers.
So might it be leverage grand list growth to decrease overall budget costs, overall budget? Because we still want to tap into that grand list growth.
Well, the grand list will come into play, but we're really focused on trying to stay flat, as opposed to trying to only go up the amount the grand list goes up, because if that happens, then the taxpayers will continue to see increases.
Okay. I just think it's worth it to keep something in about really tapping into that grand list cost, in my opinion. Thanks.
Nothing else? Okay, moving on to 13E, smoking ordinance. Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Yeah, I've been approached by a few residents. I myself have been with my daughters at the parks and have had to walk around folks smoking in the parks. One of the individuals that brought this up to me happens to be in here, Mr. Caldwell. If you could come up and speak about your concerns and about the parks. Thank you.
Good evening, John Caldwell, Superintendent of Parks. As Deputy Mayor Siracusa alluded to, it's been brought to my attention for years and years and years about smoking in parks. Little League has their own little ban that they kind of uphold. I know that football does the same thing. A lot of the sports group asked all their groups the same thing, as no smoking. Since the legalization of marijuana, though, it's become evident that most of the parks during the day are an area where people will go for recreational marijuana, and a lot of it is near playgrounds where kids are playing. Rye Street especially has become an area of concern. I've asked some people to leave in the past when some kids are playing in the playgrounds, or there's kids over playing soccer. I'm sure VMP parking lot will become an issue this spring and summer, and also some of the other parks and some of the athletic facilities. So smoking policies and bans have started to increase in towns around us. I don't have all the names. I have some of the names, but it's a very old survey that was done by CRPA, which is Connecticut Parks and Recreation. But more towns are looking into it, and it's only because of the fact that we've had increased issues at some of our parks and some of the areas around, and some of our open spaces too. like even the Major Michael Donnelly parking lot, the bird sanctuary, things like that. We've had concerns about it there too. But it has been brought up to me by a lot of residents and even our crew.
Thank you. And Mr. Maniscalco, what would that do to our health insurance costs potentially if there wasn't smoking allowed at town facilities?
If we didn't allow smoking at town facilities, of course, that would probably not promote employees from smoking, which would then, hopefully we would see a decrease in that, which would help our health insurance costs. What that exact number would be a little difficult to come up with, seeing as we're self-insured. But, you know, right now we don't have a ton of employees that smoke at this facility, but we do at other ones. We probably would still have to provide a smoking area, but we wouldn't, I would hope it would not prohibit, but I'm looking for the right word, not promote people's ability or desire to want to smoke as much, which would then, of course, help us with our costs.
Thank you.
This is also something that's been brought up through the Parks and Rec Commission, I'm going to say probably for the last 8 or 9 years or so. Mr. Favreau brought it up originally. It was proposed, we were told at the time, there wasn't really an ordinance and there wasn't a way of doing it, but towns have done it since then. So there are ordinances that now do ban it in parks and open space.
Councilor Evans? Oh, your mic.
I'm sorry, when I moved it, I turned it off. Would this just be the parks, or would this include all town property?
I mean, I think it could be.
It could be whatever the council decides it to be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be up to the council of how broad this would encompass. What would the enforcement look like this, or the consequences, and how might this impact the police department, or whoever's going to enforce it, the Parks Department?
Currently, nothing can be done because it's legal. So if there are people at a park or at an open space area and they are there, the police department can't do anything. When I call, they'll say, is there an ordinance or a policy that says there's no smoking? I mean, they can just ask them to leave, that's all, or stop.
But if this were to pass, and this were to become a town ordinance or a town policy?
Well, I think, you know, it would depend on what the council puts in their ordinance. So, you know, the council has the ability to level fines if you wanted. You could have, you know, you could put things in place where people could be banned from certain facilities as a result. You could just have it so that people are, the police department is able to ask people to be removed or just to leave. That's really at the purview of the council if you decided to go that direction.
So it would maybe be reliant on the community to, like if I were at the playground with my children and there was someone smoking and I knew they weren't supposed to be smoking, that would be up to me to say something. If they didn't, the police could be contacted. They could, is that like kind of how this would work? No one's going around monitoring this. No one's going around overseeing this. It's not, there's no cost to the town except for the man hours of the police department potentially. Yes.
I mean, we don't have an ordinance in front of us right now, so I mean, but that is a way to do it, correct?
I'd be interested to know that, especially like if there's other towns that have an ordinance, like what has the impact been in that instance?
Okay.
Deputy Mayor? Councilor Pendleton.
Oh, thank you. This was brought up many years ago. And the person that brought this up was a respiratory doctor and had his head chewed off because people were calling him and the Democrats at that time control freaks trying to control people's lives. I'd like to look back at the meeting minutes of that and watch the meeting to find out exactly what was said and why it was so objected to at that time. Is there a state law? Do we know if there's a state law that we would have to follow at this time? I'd like to get some clarification from the town attorney before we move forward with any of this. And, you know, now we're considering medical marijuana, not just cigarettes. You know, there's many things to take into consideration. So, and what would be the follow-through? How do you enforce this? So I would highly suggest that we contact the town attorney before this moves any farther, so we can get any background information about state laws and also any other towns. Because I believe that our examples were collected by you? Were the examples of the other towns collected by you?
This one example here was collected by Amanda,
Oh, okay.
because I did look up a few, and I know Town of Vernon, I believe they have one, but theirs was more
Okay.
towards the marijuana.
So yeah, if we could get the town attorney involved in this before this moves any farther. I'm not saying yes or no or anything in the difference. I just want to make sure that if this is going forward, that it's done correctly, absolute correct. So, thank you.
Yeah, because the state does have laws on the books about smoking in the parks, and they have a hard time enforcing them themselves.
I would figure. If there's homeless people living in the park and homeless people have many addictions, that would be difficult to enforce, yeah. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I don't see why if another town had no issues doing it, I don't know why we would have a problem. I would think the town attorney would have to be involved, correct, to get an ordinance put in place. So my recommendation would be just smoking in general, not medical marijuana or cigarettes. It'd just be not smoking in general. And I believe you said there's been times where you've seen people smoking in the parks, and then you try to contact the police. And Councilor Evans, I guess that would kind of fall into your question of how it would be not necessarily enforced, but reported. I don't necessarily think it'd be up to a resident to have to approach somebody. But if park staff is going around maintaining the parks and they see it, call the PD, friendly conversation, hey, you just please put that out or get out of the park.
I disagree with you.
I don't think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilor Pendleton?
There you go.
I disagree with your statement on our town staff approaching folks and asking them to stop smoking.
That's
Or to
not-
leave, no, to leave the park.
Not what I said. He would call the PD and have them come to enforce,
Okay, so then it's police department man hours that are, okay.
just like any law or ordinance that's being broken. That's up to them to do. Thank you.
Councilor Carey?
I do think that there's merit to this. I used to live in Ocean City, New Jersey, and I go back there all the time. They have banned all smoking on their boardwalk. Their boardwalk is a significant, I don't know how many miles, but it's like 3 or 4 miles long. And they don't seem to have any problem with it. They have ordinances up, you're not allowed to smoke on the boardwalk. You have, in the summertime, they have a population of almost 350,000 people there, and a lot of them are on the boardwalk and even, you don't see people violating it. I think people generally, if you tell them a rule, you'll get some, but, they do try and abide by it. And their reason for doing it is similar to what you said. You have a lot of children on that boardwalk, and they don't really want them exposed to that. And so what they're doing is trying to keep the town and the boardwalk healthy, so.
Councilor Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a sketchy area. I'm not for or against. I don't smoke. I go into many homes in the work I do, and sometimes I feel like I need to change and wash my clothes because it's so permeated with smoke. However, I recognize that it's that person's freedom, so we need to be very careful about the freedoms that we have as Americans. And possibly we can designate areas, but we need to be careful with this. So it needs some thoughtful consideration. Health-wise, I agree. There's a lot of pros for it, but I just think we need to proceed with caution. Limit it maybe to buildings, not fields, because when I did smoke, smoking outside was best. And I noticed many smokers prefer not to have their butts and their ashes in their car or in their home, but they prefer to have it outside. So, but that's also a litter problem, and that's also so there are many facets to it, and I just caution us to be thoughtful towards not infringing on the freedoms of people who, whether wrong or right, choose that they have the right to smoke because that's their choice. And so that's really all I have to say. I just want us to be mindful of that, because that's what many veterans have fought for, is for that freedom. And the freedom is to make stupid decisions if that's what you want to do. That's America. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, seeing none, moving on. 13F, Councilor Balboni.
Resolution approving of 8 refunds totaling $1,514.73. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves 8 refunds, the total of said refunds being $1,514.73, and is more fully described on attached Exhibit B.
Seconded.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 13G, Deputy Mayor Siracusa.
Resolution appointing Mark DeCiancia as a member of the Building Code Board of Appeals. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby appoints Mark DeCiancia as a member of the Building Code Board of Appeals to fill a vacancy for a term ending January 1, 2025. Consideration of this motion is postponed until the Town Council's next regularly scheduled meeting.
Mayor, second.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Pendleton.
Yes, I asked for this to be moved over under new business so we can have conversation about this appointment. I will be voting no on this appointment for the following reasons. I do not condone discrimination, prejudice, or personal attacks. Someone that is being appointed here this evening had personal attacks on social media. And someone sitting on this council is friends with the admin of the person that runs that social media group. And that was allowed without being said. And at that time, I was a mayor at that time and being personally attacked. My children were personally attacked. Nothing was said. I would also like to say that the admin of that is Frank Pascuccio, who is a dispatcher for a police department that allows bullying, anonymous comments, and personal attacks. I'm also going to go back to higher standards. That was mentioned last year when I was the mayor and the year before. And I'm going to go back to social media statements for Councilor Balboni and why I chose not to have either one of you put onto, not you, Mayor, but Councilor Balboni, because of the social media comments that you had that were prejudiced, that were discriminatory. And I believe that we are now sitting and have always been sitting in a higher standard position, and that we have to represent everyone in our community and not attack anyone in our community. We do stand as a higher standard, and I highly recommend that the Republicans vet your people before you bring them forward in looking at their statements that were made on the social media on attacking council members and the mayor at the time. What concerns me the most, too, is that he was being appointed to a commission, a board or a committee, a commission, that will be dealing with personal information and also business information that could be shared on social media. And that has already been proven that this person cannot be trusted with personal information that he has already shared on social media. So I'm concerned how he will deal with other residents or businesses within our community. And Mr. Siracusa, Deputy Mayor Siracusa, as a Christian, I know that you don't put up with bullying. I know that you don't put up with any of that. And I am speaking out for the truth, and I'm speaking out as the truth, that I, as a council member, represent everyone in this community. I will not ever pick on anyone personally. Out of respect, I offered to meet with both of you when I was the mayor. Neither one of you wanted to meet with me. And I did that purposely to not disrespect you publicly. I had nothing to do with what came out in the press during the campaign. I had nothing to do with that, and I did not want to address you publicly out of respect. As I told you, Mayor, at the time you said I hated you. I don't hate you. I told you I highly respect you. And that's why I didn't discuss it with you in any council meeting. So I am bringing forward this, that I will be voting no on this person because of what they have displayed on social media already. And I don't think that this is a good person that would represent any zoning code of appeals by any means for any business or any person in our community.
Yeah, you just said higher standards and you mentioned my faith. You know, I had countless people come up to me during the campaign saying that you were saying that myself and my wife were fake Christians. So I don't believe any of that. I don't believe you've shown me any bit of higher standards. So yeah, you know what you said, multiple. Okay, well, that's freedom of speech. You're allowed to say that. And I don't pay attention to what goes on social media, but essentially you're questioning someone's freedom of speech. And I know for a fact that you've said that about me. You've attacked multiple people sitting to my left, and you just denied that for whatever reason. That's not even part of this discussion. So if you want to go there, I'm going to go there as well. Thank you.
Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, often I appreciate your comments, Councilor Pendleton. As you know, several times I've tried to introduce myself to you and say, hey, let's get, because I wanted to get to know you better as a person and to respect you, and you've rebuffed it every time. So you have, but that's okay. What's important about social media is understanding context and the person. So I'd encourage you to get to know some of these people better, because what you're imputing to them, regardless of what was on the social media, is not consistent with the character of the person who's sitting to my right. I just say context is important and where things come from. And I don't do social media, so I haven't read it. I've heard some things here and there. I've spoken to him about it. But instead, I got to know the person, as I tried with you as well.
And I would like to add as well that out in public and in here, just at the conference room today, I always say hello to you, and you rebuff me every time in public. And it's been brought to my attention, people notice it. And you're looking for respect. And I try to give it, say hello to you, and I don't get it back. It happened on Saturday. I said hello.
I appreciate, point of order, I appreciate you, but I'm not up to discussion here this evening.
Correct,
The
but you're
person
looking
that's
for,
being appointed,
but you're
thank you.
looking for respect.
No, I'm not looking for respect, because it doesn't matter to me if you choose to respect me or not. What matters to me is that I can sleep at night knowing that I did the best thing for our community as a council member by appointing someone that I know has been vetted and can be trusted with the job that they are given to do. And the personal attacks that you have spoke to him about, thank you. Or the lies that were addressed, thank you.
Call for the question.
Okay, question's been called. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstentions? Roll call. Okay, roll call. Thank you.
Councilor Buganski? Councilor Lewis? Yes. Councilor Balboni? Aye. Councilor Carey?
Yes.
Mayor Delnicki?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Siracusa?
Yes.
Counselor King? Counselor Evans?
No.
Counselor Pendleton? No. I have one abstention from Counselor King, 2 noes from Counselors Evan and Pendleton, and 6 yeses.
And motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 14, passage of ordinance, seeing none. Item 15, public input for any matter. Public input for any matter shall not exceed 30 minutes. When recognized by the mayor, the speakers shall approach the lectern, give their name and address. Speakers shall avoid personal attacks or impugning or alleging an improper motive to any person. The speakers may address the council on any item, and the speaker shall be limited to time of 5 minutes. Anyone from the public like to speak?
Hi, David Hodge, 83 Muriel Drive, South Windsor, obviously. I spoke a couple months ago, I think, or a month ago. I'm the high school football coach. I taught here for 10 years. I've lived in town for 27. Just a couple points of information based on some of the conversation earlier. There are currently 23 teams in Double L. All of them except for one I can confirm have lights. The only one I can't confirm online is Crosby High School. And just so you know, not all the sports are necessarily in L or Double L. Sometimes they're up, sometimes down. In the CIAC, which is Class L Double L, only happens when you get into the state playoffs. Most of our games are within our conferences in the CCC, which you saw almost all of them except for a couple of smaller regional districts have lights at this point. And the other thing is, if we're fortunate enough to get in a championship, they have that one at a neutral site. So all the CIAC state finals, soccer, football, are all at neutral sites this year. They were at Rensselaer and CCCSU. The semifinals and quarters are home. 6 years ago when we made the quarters, and fortunate enough to have a home game, we did play at East Hartford. If any of you are not familiar with that, we were not able to play at home this year. We just missed because we couldn't score from the 1 yard line against Platt, but that's my issue, that I don't sleep at night. The only other thing I had was I was a little confused too, and I know you can't answer my questions, about the cost going forward. Because at the beginning I kind of heard that it was the $44 of the third year that continued for the next 17 years. And then it went back to, no, it's the 87, the total of the first 3 years that goes forward annually for the next. So as a taxpayer on the other end, I'm not sure which one it is, and I don't think anybody watching this right now may know which one it is, and I think it's important, especially for you when you're making your decision about moving this forward either in March, hopefully in March with the price, and the price tag doesn't go up another $1 million and wait another year and have another group of kids not get the benefit of using the field. So I really hope that you give the taxpayers an opportunity to voice their opinion on whether they want to spend that extra money per month to help support all these initiatives that Dr. Carter has brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? Going once, twice, seeing none. Moving on to item 16, communications from the council. Councilor Balboni.
I was asked to read this about the South Windsor Banner Program. The South Windsor Veterans Banner Program recognizes veterans living in our community for their service. Banners are displayed from Memorial Day through Veterans Day at the Community Center and Town Hall. Plans are underway for the 2024 nominees. If you are a veteran or know of any veteran from the Korean War, World War II, or Vietnam who is a current resident of South Windsor who is willing to be nominated, please call the Patriotic Commission members Herb Asplund, Daria Plummer, to nominate a veteran who is a Manchester resident. Call Richard Zaremba. I have their phone numbers available, but I'd rather not read them in public. Thank you.
you, Counselor Balboni. Any other
Madam Mayor.
communications?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead if you need to address.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear this up, seeing as some people seem to have some confusion about it. As it relates to the cost for the project, it's $85.75, starting year 4 through 20. So that's the cost that residents would pay if your home is valued at $350,000. So that cost actually will be more if your home is valued at more, or less if your home is valued at less. But that 85.75 is the cost moving forward every year. So that's year 2029 forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Pendleton?
Sorry, I'm just looking for that. You gave that to us, Mr. Maniscalco, in a printout, did you not? Is it that one right here?
It's on the chart on the back of Dr. Carter's.
But what we have in a printout is, oh, here it is.
I think your printout shows also what the cost would be if you were to, oh, so the printout in your packet is not the updated version. There was a text, or there was a calculation error in the one in your packet.
So we shouldn't be looking at this printout?
No, don't look at that one.
Okay, thank you.
An email did go out with the
updated version.
The updated
Thank you.
version.
Sorry for the confusion.
Okay. Sorry, no, I'll get back to that. Okay. Yes, communications from the council. I'd like to communicate with the council that there are boards, commissions, and committees. And looking at the council committee assignments, I'm letting you know that I am only able to serve on the pension committee and capital projects. I have many out of all of these that were given to me that I cannot make the others. So I will only be able to serve on the capital projects and on the pension. Also, for the boards and commissions, some of them are required and some of them are not to have liaisons. And there have been many that have been given to me that I will not be able to serve on. There was never any conversation with any of us council members as to what we can serve on or not serve on. And like I said, some are not required to have liaisons. So dictating to us, appointing doesn't mean that you can get to pick. We are volunteers. And it's a little presumptuous and unprofessional thinking that you're picking what we're doing with our lives when we haven't even checked with our own families. So as I stated, you didn't discuss any of the appointments with us, so I can only do pension and capital. Thank you.
Well, I appointed you as liaisons to the former Counselor Lopez. I took liberty to put you where he was serving. And also, if I remember, when now Deputy Mayor Siracusa was appointed to the council, he was just thrown at committees. So I was just trying to fill positions that needed to be filled. And if you had any questions, all you had to do was contact me, and I could have looked at the list again to find someone else to take a position that you could not serve.
And Councilor Siracusa, Deputy Mayor Siracusa, we had a conversation about what he wanted to serve on at the time and what he couldn't make and could make, and you don't know that conversation that him and I had, and it is text message and it is phone call. And every single one of the council members that sat there, I gave them the option to choose what they like to serve on, of which you do not for us, and I can only make pension and capital. Thank you. And I brought it up purposely at a council meeting so others can hear what then would be open if they'd like to serve on something. But if you check the ordinance and creations of all the boards and commissions, it will tell you which ones require liaisons. Not all of them do. So.
Yeah, liaisons are what is listed on that multi-page document, and that's what I was working off of.
But they're not required. So, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I'll lighten the mood here. I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and also want to commend the community of South Windsor for stepping up for my Christmas initiative, working with the social workers at the schools for some families that may or may not be comfortable asking for help. The social workers know the families that are in a little extra need at this time of year, and I gotta say, the people that signed up just went above and beyond. These families are gonna be insanely blessed. We're making that drop off tomorrow to the schools. 2 more families actually came up last Thursday when I was in Chicago, and again, within like 30 minutes to an hour, we had all those families taken care of. So again, the community came together. It was amazing to witness, and I'm excited to kind of build upon that in the coming years. So, thank you.
I'll take the time right now to say I'd like to thank the South Windsor community. Saturday night, we held a collection drive with the assistance of the South Windsor Panthers at my home with the Christmas lights, and we raised just over $1,400 and dropped off a lot of food to the community center. So again, I'd like to thank the community that did come by and assisted. And seeing none, other comments, executive session, item 17. Having none, item 18. Adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned.